The guy stood in front of the man, looking at him in surprise. It had been 5 years since they last met. The man looked sad, turning to the guy. He noticed with a smile that Chow Eun-yup had grown up. The guy frowned at the man, placing a hand on his side. Chow Eun-yup's longtime friend had warned him that there would be no hot hugs, but the guy didn't need them. Chow Eun-yup remembered that he and the man had started out differently. The friend smiled faintly. He remembered that period too. The guy smiled cheekily and slung his weapon over his shoulder. He remembered being burned, so he had learned a lot from that day. The man noticed that Chow Eun-yup never let go of that incident. It wasn't so easy for him to let go of unpleasant memories. The guy whipped down his weapon and lunged at the man with a shout. The whip flew at him, but the longtime comrade bounced away. Chow Eun-yup whipped his whip around the man's sword with his whip, but he drew it and used a technique, quickly approaching the surprised guy. Chow Eun-yup was surprised that the man had comprehended the sim technique. Seol Su-byum broke the guy's whip. Chow Eun-yup saw that Seol Su-byum had also changed. He was even happy about it, because he had always wanted to fight someone like that. This story started long before the lad was born. In 6 trials of the sword, the Seol family had become the most influential family. One cold winter day, a family of beggars left a child at the Seol family's doorstep and disappeared. The baby was picked up by a nanny, and since then he lived as a servant in their house. This child was Chow Eun-yup. He served the family faithfully for almost 10 years. He believed that patience and hard work would change everything. During his time with the Seol family, he had learned a few things about them. For example, contrary to public opinion, the head of the family was a dumb man. Sol Sadok, the head of the family, honed his sword technique every morning. It was like the white crane dance, Sadok called it. Every day, Chow Eun-yup watched him, and every day he was bothered by certain things. It kept seeming to him that the technique was more about defending one's position and allowing one to retreat at any moment. This was one of the techniques in which it was important to breathe properly. The boy was so immersed in his thoughts that he didn't notice the head stopped practicing and looked at him sternly. He yelled at the boy. He didn't like the fact that the boy kept hanging around when he was practicing. Chow Eun-yup lied, saying that the master's technique was so impressive that he glared. The man, wiping himself from his sweat, couldn't believe the boy understood anything. Chow Eun-yup laughed awkwardly, deciding in his mind that he would talk to him later about what he didn't like about the technique. The man had spent decades developing the technique, but even Chow Eun-yup, a mere servant, could spot the imperfections. Suddenly, he was yelled at to not distract the head. The boy ran up to the old man. It was Grandpa Huang. The old man warned Chow Eun-yup that he was not allowed to come to the head because he was a servant. But the boy still couldn't believe that a person with such skills was among that 100 martial artists. There was another reason why Chow Eun-yup thought he was dumbheaded. His first marriage was to Min Gain. People said that the head took bad care of her. The mistress herself was very good. But they fought constantly. 10 times out of 10 they couldn't agree. Madam was very wise. She was respected by everyone. Sadok was jealous of his own wife, so he treated her so coldly. This attitude Sadok carried over to their children as well, and this continued until Gayan died. Because of his infantilization, Sadok lost people close to him, so it was impossible for such a person to be the head of the family. That was the backstory of the family, but there was also the story of Chow Eun-yup himself. The story wasn't just about him, but also about Seol Su-byum. While the boy was rejoicing that the harvest was good, a gloomy Seol Su-byum walked behind him and looked at him unhappily. Suddenly, he grabbed the boy from behind. Chow Eun-yup yelped and turned angrily at Su-byum. He was not happy about being grabbed by the scruff of his neck. But when the boy saw who exactly grabbed him, he opened his eyes wide in surprise and fright. Chow Eun-yup was picked up and made a slave, and when he turned 7, he became an errand boy. As a result, he remembered the neighborhood well. In the gathering crowd, he saw a boy. Most of the boys his age were orphans, and since they had no money, they stole to survive. Right now, the boy reached his hand out for food, but he was grabbed by a big man and dragged behind him. If thieves were caught, they were simply beaten to death. But Chow Eun-yup was different. Even without looking around, he could feel 1,000 eyes watching his every move. Instinctively, the boy began to avoid other people's attention. He knew how to remain unnoticed. Dumplings, rice cakes, etc. Everything effortlessly became his. The boy helped the orphans, for they didn't have his abilities, and Chow Eun-yup felt good about helping. And that day it was business as usual. Nothing portended trouble, but suddenly Su-byum appeared and grabbed him by the scruff of the neck. He knew that all the groceries that Chow and Yup had were stolen from different stores. Seol started to tell him off. The boy was confused and scared. He didn't understand how the other knew that he was the one who stole. It was strange because Cha Won-yup didn't see the master at all places. Su-bom punched Cha Un-yup. He didn't like that the boy started lying to him. The guy fell to the ground. He was still in shock that he had pulled this kind of trick many times before. And how could he not notice the master this time? The master hovered over him fearfully. Cha Won-yup leaned on his hands, trembling. It was the first time he had been caught in all this time. He was scared that the master saw everything and knew everything as if he was God himself. The boy felt fear for the first time in an unusual, animalistic way. It seemed to him that Seol could see right through him. Saul told him that he would have understood him if he had been stealing to feed himself, but he was fed, so he had no excuse. He shouted hard that the boy should be ashamed because he had dishonored Seol's family. The boy was displeased but still promised to pay everything out of his pocket. Sol Su-byum strictly ordered the boy to take his wallet with him every time he went out into the city. Su-bom put his hand on the hilt of his sword and said that if he left again without paying, pulling out his sword sharply and pointing it at Chow Un-yup, shouted that he would cut off his wrists. The boy dejectedly thought that if he did so, he would atone and earn forgiveness. Chow Un-yup's excitement for stealing immediately vanished. The guy realized that he was wrong because he was caught, and Su-byum immediately guessed where the loot came from. The master clearly knows what kind of person in front of him just by looking at his eyes. Cha Won-yup thought the master was the scariest person he knew, but the head of their family did not appreciate the great master's abilities. Because he was blinded by his love for his second wife, this was another reason why Cha Un-yup thought Sadak was dumb. His second wife was Gansuk-chu's eldest daughter, Jang Sun-mi. Jang Sun-mi was a smart woman. She could get people to side with her. The girl was able to break up father and son. The Grand Master could have prevented it, but he himself let it happen. Cha Won-yup didn't like it. He was just a spectator, but if he was asked to intervene, the guy would do so. While furtively watching Su-byum, the guy saw a girl who was quickly running down the road. It was Seol Sang-hee, the second daughter of the Seol family. The girl stopped near the door, quickly looked around and went inside. Cha Un-yup was shocked, for she had gone to the master's chambers. He jumped over the fence and kept wondering what she was doing here, for the room had already been cleaned. Conflicts were common in the history of the Seol family, and what was more interesting was what would happen between San-mi and Master Seol Su-byum. Cha Un-yup walked into Su-byum's room. Sang-hee was clumsy, so the guy hoped that she left a hint of her presence. It turned out that way. The girl forgot to close the locker door, so Cha Un-yup went over to see what the girl was up to. After reading the scroll, he didn't understand at first, but then it came to him that they were going to cause a stir and accuse the Grand Master of missing house documents. And if they succeeded, the Great Master would be kicked out in disgrace. The boy looked at the scroll skeptically and then thought, now he did not know what to do with all this. The boy stood in the room holding the scroll in his hands. He kept thinking that if the documents were found in the master's room, he would be accused of a serious crime. And that's what the devious Jang Sun-mi wanted. Cha Won-yup thought that even though master scolded him, he didn't break his promise and always paid for the orphan's food. At first, he thought that Su-byum was trying to clean up the family's reputation, but the master secretly left him money in the pit in both snow and rain. The master kept his word to every servant, so the guy respected him, but that didn't save him from Yang San-mi's tricks. The guy didn't understand how he could be fooled by Seol Sang-hee, and he didn't understand what would happen to him if the master left the family, so it appeared that the war between Su-byum and Sammy would end before it started. Cha Won-yup, clutching hard the scroll in his hands, angrily thought that he should do something. After all, the fight was more interesting to watch if both sides were on equal terms. The boy reassured himself that he was doing it all for the spectacle, not because he respected the master or appreciated his kindness, and not because the latter was partial to orphans. A few days later, the father summoned Su-bom to the carpet. The master sat in front of his father on his knees. Next to the head was his second wife and daughter. The man rudely asked if the son knew why he was summoned. The boy, of course, didn't know. He was scowling and didn't understand why everyone was gathered so early today. The man was angry. He forbade his son from trying to deny and told him that the land contract he had signed was not there. He was all leading up to the fact that his son had stolen the contract. The boy started to deny it. The man got angry and pestered Su-bom about where the contract was. Semi intervened in the argument. The woman said that the boy had started frequenting the slum. She said she was worried that the boy might have picked up something there. Subyom frowned at her. The woman gave him a venomous look to convince everyone that she was worried. Subyom realized that the woman wanted to make him look like a thief. Suddenly, Sang-hee spoke. She excitedly said that she remembered that she noticed a scroll in the master's room while cleaning. Subyom depressedly noticed that he was being tried to be framed. The guy was doing his best to keep his promise to his grandmother. But now everything was literally on the line, for even Seol's second daughter was involved. The girl smiled nervously and said that she thought he had fallen under a bad influence. But it was a brazen lie. The master had seen her beating Cha Woon-yeop, calling him a slave. Sang-hee didn't take those below her in status as people. Subyom didn't understand how his father could not see this. The head of the family roared for his son's room to be searched. A servant found the scroll and brought it to head Seol, telling him that it was indeed in the master's room, just like Sang-hee said. The head taking the scroll from the servant's hands was very angry. The guy sadly thought that even the servant wouldn't like this mess. The man opened the scroll and was loudly surprised. His wife squinted at him. In front of the head was not a contract, but some scribbles. Subyom was very confused when he heard this. But when he saw the scroll, he immediately recognized that the white crane technique was drawn on it. He guessed that it was the work of Cha Woon-yeop's hands. The master, relieved, leaned over and lied that he hid it in the closet because he was ashamed of his drawing ability. The head was shocked. His wife was displeased. Subyom glumly asked them if it was forbidden and looked in front of him. He saw Cha Woon-yeop sitting on a tree branch watching them. The boy jumped up on the branch, scared. He was perplexed how the master saw him from there. He was scaring him. Subyom asked his father if he was free. The head stammered and let him go. Sang-hee suddenly intervened unhappily, but her mother gave her a sneaky glance and ordered her not to say a word. That was the end of the incident. Cha Woon-yeop had the contract, for no one would suspect a mere errand boy. The guy was sitting under a tree near a hole. There was a bag of money in it, pulling it out from there. Cha Woon-yeop frowned, thinking that one should be able to defend himself. But suddenly he heard a voice behind him. It was Seol Soo-young, the youngest daughter of the Seol family. The girl stood there and smiled sweetly at him. She apologized if she scared him. The boy jumped to his feet fearfully, hiding the bag of money behind his back, excitedly asking why she was awake since it was too early. The girl said she thought he was hiding something. Soo-young smilingly admitted that her brother told her how he used to steal food for poor children. The girl sadly remarked that stealing wasn't good, but he was doing a good deed, so she was happy to know that there were still good people in the world. But the boy held the sack in his hands and began to say that he was a miserable thief and even helped the master because he was angry with Seol's second daughter because she had beaten him recently. He said all this to convince her that he wasn't as good as she thought he was. But Soo-yeon knew that wasn't true. Smiling slyly, she said that she was still grateful to him because he helped her brother and called the guy smart. Cha Woon-yeop, scratching the back of his head, thought that master would never call him smart. Soo-young had the ability to find something good in a person, even if they didn't deserve it. She had a very gentle and sensitive nature. The boy thought about it. Sami was acting wild. Seol Soo-young was held back by her reputation of being a good girl. The boy thought that being a servant was good because he had nothing to lose. Cha Woon-yeop wondered what would become of his brother and sister if what they were so desperate to protect disappeared. A servant ran in to Subyom and shocked him with the news that their grandmother had died. The boy was all pale and lost. He stood on the threshold to his grandmother's room. Grandma was covered with towels. The boy pushed the towel away, took her hand and leaned his head against it bitterly. He was very saddened by her sudden demise. He remembered his grandmother's admonition. She told him that intra-family conflicts would only lead to discord, so the boy should always protect his family. After all, he was the eldest son. She asked him to make a promise to her. But now that his grandmother had died, Subyom was very angry. He asked for her forgiveness because he could no longer look after the family. The funeral was gloomy. Subyom sat on his knees beside his grandmother's coffin. The old man approached Cha Woon-yeop, looking sadly at the master, offered to leave him. Soo-yeon's grief and the young master's suffering was very hard to look at, but the guy could not interfere in this, like with the documents on the ground, but could only observe. Cha Woon-yeop looked at his grandfather. The old man was very sad. The boy sadly thought that now their family was completely in Sanmi's hands. The boy thought that the second wife would pester Subyom, but she left him alone, as if she was saving it for later. A month passed. The young master was constantly in thoughts. Cheon-yup himself could only guess what they were about. It was deep in the night. Subam came to the tree near which he constantly left a sack of money for the orphans. After putting the sack into the hole, he said that this was probably the last time he was doing this, and headed towards the exit of the courtyard with the sack of things behind him. Suddenly, someone from upstairs told him that they knew the master would be leaving soon. The guy looked up and saw a cheerful Cheon-yup. The guy noticed that if the young master had made such a big decision, he would need the money. The guy took out a scroll from his pocket and showed it to the master, saying that he would need this too. Subam replied that it was like the guy knew he was going to leave. Cheon-yup, getting down from the tree, said he was waiting for him. When the guy was on the ground, started yelling at the master. He doesn't understand why the guy is leaving the family. After all, he should behave like a proper eldest son. Cheon-yup recognized that the master was wise, so he didn't understand why he needed to hide his abilities. The boy sadly lowered his eyes and replied that his grandmother would have wanted him to stay. His grandmother didn't want her son and grandson to feud and her daughter-in-law to bring everything to ruin, so the guy admitted that it was good that she didn't see everything. But now Subam's grandmother was gone, so he now had no reason to keep his word. But he promised the bewildered Cheon-yup to come back again, because now Sanmi would be in charge of everything. The guy realized that she would want to get rid of him, and then his father too, and he would realize it would be too late. The guy shouted loudly that he is the eldest son of this family, will not just stand by and watch. He promised to come back strong. Cheon-yup said he understood him well. The young master cannot become stronger in the current situation within the family. Subam sternly asked what the guy was implying. With a wink, the boy replied that there was nothing to learn and gave the white crane technique as an example. Cheon-yup showed him the fifth stage of the technique, the two-sword style, and Subam looked at him perplexed. The guy stood in a stance. The scroll served as his sword. He described the technique. Two swords, one defending, the other attacking. All the support should be moved to the hips and showed exactly how, but their family didn't accept this stance, thinking it didn't fit the original style. Therefore, Cheon-yup thought that now was the perfect time for a master to go beyond the old traditions and learn something new. Subam frowned his eyebrows in surprise. He already wanted to pull out his sword, saying that the guy was right about something, but these remarks were as if he was trying to discredit the family in his eyes. But Cheon-yup, winking and raising an important index finger upwards, said that he wasn't trying to do that. After all, he had grown up here, and explained that they didn't want to let go of the old. The boy, handing the scroll to the master, said they met now because he was worried about him. The young master deftly intercepted the scroll, and after a little silence, thanked the boy but warned that if he stole anything again, he would personally punish him. Subam still had one more request for Cheon-yup. He asked him to keep an eye on his sister Su-young. As he kept an eye on him, he asked him not to leave her behind. A tree was blooming in the garden. The girl looked at the flowers. It was cold. She put her hands together and breathed on them to warm up a bit. The master allowed Cheon-yup to continue to show interest in her, as he did now. The guy was a little confused. He was embarrassed and angrily asked when was it that he said he was interested in Su-young. But Subam only teased him even more why he was so flustered and asked if he liked his sister. Anyway, he didn't care about that. He threw the scroll back to the guy and said he could do whatever he wanted with it. The master turned around and walked away, telling Cheon-yup that his disobedience would make him alive. The boy looked after him with sad eyes. They said goodbye like brothers, but he only realized that later. It was spring. The boy was picking herbs in the garden. He gathered enough in his basket and took it and hurried back so he wouldn't be late. On his shoulder, Cheon-yup carried a basket. Spring came, and it was warmer. The young master had left them less than 6 months ago, but the guy himself had grown like a yeast. This made him do more errands, but every time he went into town, he made sure that the boys the foreman took care of were doing well. Luckily, his sister Su-young was doing well. Sammy didn't see her as a threat. The guy reached the city. He knew that the young master must have foreseen the stepmother and sister's conflict, so he asked him to keep an eye on her. But the master's abilities were much better than his. Cheon-yup walking over to the women, he heard one tell the other that someone was on their way from the Yayul family. The guy walked over to them and handed over a basket of grass. The women greeted him cheerfully and said that he was quick. Cheon-yup smiled and asked what was wrong. A woman told him that someone from the Yayul family would be staying with them, so they had to have time to prepare everything. The guy exhaled tiredly and said that those important bigwigs would pick on everything. But their arrival was strange because the Yayo family had never received such treatment. There were boys struggling behind the guy, yelling at him to look. Cha Woon-yup yelled for them to be quiet. He threw them gold coins on a string and let them buy some goodies. The woman in pink told the guy that they were ordered not just to prepare the dishes, but to set a festive table, so they figured there was an occasion. Cha Eun-yup, looking at the orphans who were deciding who would have the money, frowned as he thought about what they were celebrating. The guy thought a festive table to celebrate the arrival of a guest. Nothing else usually happened in the village. And suddenly Cha Eun-yup noticed something that made his face crinkle. Sanmi was handing things in an envelope to Sang-hee. It was a gift. The woman covered herself with a fan and said that young master Seven Yayul had put a lot of effort to please Soo-yeon. So now it was their turn to take care of people. Soo-young looked at the gift confusedly and excitedly. Her stepmother had told her that the head of the family was busy. The young master had left without explaining himself. It was now the girl's responsibility to make useful connections. The woman slyly looked at the girl, snidely asking if she would let her family down. Soo-young remained silent. She was in a depressed mood. The guy stood in the barn with a wooden stick. He started practicing. Soo-young was being quiet. In the absence of young master Sanmi, she was trying to reduce the risk of external threat. She was even willing to use Soo-young as a tool. Cha Woon-yup didn't know much. He was a servant after all. And if Soo-young went somewhere, there would be nothing left for him to do but to go after her. The guy was dissatisfied. He didn't like the white crane technique. He needed a more serious technique. Suddenly, two figures appeared behind the guy. They were displeased that the slave was playing with sticks instead of working. They were Seol Sang-hee and Seol Sang-il. Cha Woon-yup was puzzled as to why they had come. The guy bowed and said he was cleaning up the trash scattered around the firewood. They went at him, not wanting to believe his words. The guy walked up to him and snatched a stick, saying that he had heard that he watched his father practice the white crane technique every morning. Sang-il made a mad face and called the guy names and said that he would never be able to master the martial art unlike him. The second son of the head kicked Cha Woon-yup in the side and he fell to the floor. Sang-il put a stick on his shoulder and smugly said that he would teach him how to wield a sword, his sister smiling cheekily. Cha Eun-yup, lying on the floor, only now realized that they had been watching every servant on Sanmi's orders. The boys taunted him, demanding that he get up and try to defend himself. The guy stood up a little. Sang-il kept nudging him, but then angrily ran straight at Cha Eun-yup. Cha Woon-yup kneeled up, thinking to himself that this kid wanted to fight him even though he wasn't even a master. The boy dodged Sang-il's punch and he flew forward with his stick stretched out in front of him. He slammed his face into the wall with all his might. He was in pain. His sister looked at him worriedly and called out to him. She ran up behind Cha Woon-yup and grabbed his arms, yelling for her brother to beat him up. Sang-il stood up. He was very angry. The guy was worried that he now had an abrasion on his face. Cha Eun-yup didn't break free from the girl's hands. Sang-il walked up to him and punched him in the stomach. The guy kept punching and punching him while Cha Eun-yup was held by his sister. The guy got angry and the situation got out of control. Now Cha Woon-yup had nothing to do but endure Sang-il's punches. These kids always messed things up for the guy. He kept thinking that if the young master had taken the land papers with him, he would have been free. Beaten up, the lad hung on the arms of the head's second daughter. He didn't realize what he should do now. The guy thought it would be great if they met and he showed him his martial arts skills. But here he was, getting paid for practicing with a wooden stick. Martial arts was a pipe dream of Cha Woon-yup's, because the master would kill him quickly if they met. Now he was even surprised that he really wanted to show him his skills after all. He couldn't protect himself. He couldn't keep Soo-young safe. The guy lay at his feet and looked up. His gaze met Soo-byum's stern face. Cha Woon-yup hated this feeling. He would never become like the young master. Lying at the feet abnormal children, Cha Eun-yup was sick of himself. Suddenly a figure appeared in the doorway of the barn and called out to everyone. It was Soo-young. Her brother and sister looked at her perplexed. The girl walked over to the beaten boy and sat down beside him. She put him on her lap. Cha Eun-yup was embarrassed that she caught him in that position. He was supposed to be protecting her, not her protecting him. He woke up already in another place and tearfully started to promise Soo-young, but an old man leaned over him and grabbed his cheek to make the guy wake up. The old man said that what he was mumbling in his sleep said that Cha Woon-yup was very disappointed that he was beaten. When the guy already saw for sure that it wasn't Su Yong in front of him, scaredly jumped up, the old man asked what happened this time. Cha Wunyup touched his bandaged stomach and noticed that he didn't have any pain. He was alarmed at how long he had slept. So the guy asked the old man how long he had been unconscious. The man told him that he had been lying down for a whole day. It had all happened about 24 hours ago. Soo-young found him. The girl sadly remarked that if his broken ribs were left like that, every movement would bring pain. So the girl touched the broken places with her hands. A bright blue glow appeared from her fingers. She noticed that her brother was hitting the most vulnerable places, so she asked for forgiveness on his behalf. While Soo-young was healing him, the guy painfully awed. The girl touched 2 fingers to his neck and promised that it would get better soon. Then she put him to sleep to rest. Cha Eun-yup remembered all this. The old man assumed that the kid was upset by the news of Soo-yeon's wedding, but the guy disagreed. The man smiled and said that it happens at his age. But the grandfather immediately warned that their protest played absolutely no role. The guy was not happy, but from this sentence, Cha Eun-yup realized that the grandfather did not want it either. But the old man shouted at him that it had nothing to do with that. The guy grabbed his stomach and said that his shout made his ribs shudder. Cha Eun-yup thought about it and remembered that the old man used to live with Young-won, and Soo-young only sent him here because he was a confidant of the Seol family. The grandfather was stunned. It all made sense to the guy because he remembered how unhappy the old man was at the funeral, and he asked him directly what his relationship with Grandma was, because it was similar to his relationship with Soo-young. Grandpa was shocked. He asked the brash boy what he was trying to say, but the boy importantly raised his index finger up. Cha Eun-yup told Grandpa Hwan about what was going on in the Seol family, about the land contract case and the young master, about how Seol Sang-hee and Seol Sang-il are related to Jang San-mi. Also the sudden news that Soo-yeon is being given away in marriage. His suspicions that San-mi is involved in everything don't seem so unfounded. The man held his hand over his face in shock. The guy said that it was suspicious that San-mi was actively involved in the wedding. The old man was worried because San-mi always only cheats and asked the guy why he told him all this. Cha Eun-yup didn't understand. Grandpa Huang said that he always managed to fool the stupid old man. The guy laughed and replied that he didn't mean to mock him. Laughing made the guy's stomach hurt. The man got up and sat next to him. He said it was because his ribs were injured. She said that Soo-young had stopped the internal bleeding, but there was still a recovery period waiting for him. Soo-young was able to reach such a level of martial arts that she could now control internal energy. The guy could only sit and talk thanks to the girl. The old man asked him to repeat after him. He was teaching him how to breathe properly. Cha Eun-yup asked him if he had studied martial arts too, but the old man replied that they would talk later and ordered him to take a slow breath. He all started to glow a little blue light. Cha Eun-yup looked at him and started repeating. Proper breathing promoted better circulation of internal energy. After a couple of cycles, all the pain went away. The guy was amazed and asked his grandfather if he had thought of it himself. The old man told him that when he was his age, he met a wise man in the mountains. He gave him a book in exchange for raisins, and in that book he read it. The boy speculated that he might have been a martial arts master. Grandpa Huang got up and walked over to the closet. Opening it, he replied that anything could be, and admitted that the guy had a bright mind, so he might be able to find something useful in there too. He pulled out the book and blew the dust off of it. The kid was supposed to be on bed rest, so there would be something to do. The grandfather himself hadn't gotten any further than the first chapter. Cha Eun-yup crawled closer, looking at the simple old book. The old man said it would help him if he wanted to learn martial arts. Now the boy was excited to see what else he could learn about from this book. He picked it up. Grandpa Huang ordered Cha Eun-yup to rest. The lad asked where he was going. The old man said that he would go tell Young-won that the lad would stay here for a while, for from their conversation, the grandfather had realized something about him. The man smiled at him and said that he was glad that the young master recognized him. The lad was left alone. Holding the book in his hands and examining it, he realized something too, and it meant a lot. He opened the book and began to read. There was heaven and earth, and in between were people. In each person flowed the energy of heaven and earth. If you kept your energy clean, you could achieve balance. Much was written further on, but after the first sentence, the guy understood the feelings of the sage who wrote the book. He was too weak and gave up everything to become stronger. So here he left the manual of proper breathing as the basis of inner strength. Those who were willing to labor day and night would reach incredible heights. Cha Wunyap sat surrounded by a golden flame of energy, his pain almost gone. And after all, this was only the first chapter. The guy took a breath in and out and then abruptly lowered his face to the floor. He wasn't happy with his breathing. He ran out of the room, furious that it was very difficult, but suddenly he felt no pain at all. He looked at the book once more and said aloud that it was quite extraordinary. Cha Wunyap prostrated himself on the doorstep and promised that he would chop up whatever was in there. The guy opened his eyes. Right above him stood a joyful Su Young. Behind her stood an excited woman. They were sitting inside the room. The girl came to check on the guy and asked if he was feeling better. She also wanted to apologize on behalf of her sibling, but Cha Wunyap smilingly asked her not to because she already helped him ease his pain. But the girl was worried about him. It was lucky for her that everything had turned out all right. Cha Wunyap blushed embarrassedly and assured her that he was fine as long as he didn't run into his brother and sister again. Su-yeon laughed at him as she stood up, promising to bring the medicine and telling him to remember to take it on time. Lastly, she asked her to say hi to Grandpa Huang, and they left. The guy was slumped. He picked up the book in his hands again. He thought he could handle it, but Su-young was very worried. So Cha Wunyap decided he needed to get stronger. The guy started practicing breathing. His grandfather came to him and started scolding him why he wasn't sleeping, because it was already late. Cha Wunyap was shocked that it was already nighttime when it was morning. He was so engrossed in breathing that he didn't notice the time had passed. He asked how long his grandfather had been gone, but he told him that he had been gone for half a day. It was nighttime outside. Cha Wunyap stood up, putting his hand to his forehead, thinking desperately that he was only practicing his breathing technique. His grandfather, seeing that the guy could stand, was excited that he was already standing. But the guy had already forgotten about the pain. He exuded energy and felt that he didn't even feel discomfort. The hero was full of strength and energy. The man asked him to sit closer because he wanted to tell him something. Cha Wunyap sat down and bombarded the grandfather with questions about where he had been, what kind of bag he had with him. The grandfather said that as he was going through his things, he remembered a very fascinating story. Even before Cha Wunyap was born, there were two families that vied for power over Hanam Castle. The first was the Meteor Sword Gate, led by Dan Mok Jun. The second, the White Dragon Fortress, was less famous. The White Dragon Fortress was victorious due to their unique martial arts skills. The Baekdo Alliance, who had prophesied victory to Meteor Sword Gate, watched the fight in amazement. Meteor Sword Gate lost and retreated. After this incident, neither family was heard of. Suddenly, the successor of the White Dragon Fortress revealed himself. Cha Wunyap frowned. He thought it was someone from the Yayul family, and Sanmi must have been in cahoots with them. The old man admitted that he had tried to dig up something about Su-young's fiancée, but there was extremely little information about him. But Jang Sanmi definitely knew. Cha Wunyap was starting to understand something. The old man said that was all he knew. He didn't know if this marriage would bring trouble to Su-yeon, since they knew next to nothing about the Yayul family. The man took the sack. The guy asked what it was. Grandpa Huang looked at him surprised and said that it was the clothes his grandmother had made him when she was alive. After her funeral, he couldn't even touch it. Until today, Cha Wunyap looked at him sadly and said he understood how he felt. But the old man refused and assured the guy that he needed to figure it out on his own. The hero asked his grandfather to be careful, but the grandfather replied that he might not be as smart as he was, but he had seen some things over the years. He promised that he'd handle it, but he passed Su-young on to the guy. Grandpa Huang left at dawn. Granny meant a lot to him, but Granny died and Grandpa left. Cha Wunyap had promised not only the young master, but also the grandfather that he would protect Su-yeon. And now they were both gone, and instead of him taking care of her, she was taking care of him herself. The guy had the nerve to decide that he had to become stronger, whether it was for revenge or to keep his loved ones safe. It didn't matter. He just wanted to live his life without regrets. Being a servant, Cha Wunyap really wants to arrange his life like that. To be free, to have no one above him, he began to hone his breathing again. For his purposes, he had to become stronger. Dark magic would be more effective here, but there is no love on the dark side. For Su-young, he couldn't be a reliable defense yet. The girl was smart, so the guy figured she could get through the difficult moments on her own. She had her own way, and he had to find his. Looking at Grandpa Huang, who was looking sadly at his grandmother's back. He didn't understand 100% of his feelings, but he saw his sadness when his grandfather couldn't keep someone he cared about safe. so Cha Eun-yup decided that things would be different for him. Suddenly, he was interrupted. Uncle Yong-un came to see him. His uncle knew what kind of boy. Was a restless boy, so he was scared that the boy would already go crazy from the bed rest. Cha Won-yup laughed, kneeling down and leaning on his hands. Uncle Jang-un brought him some food because the boy was already visibly drained. The boy took the food. The man warned him that he could take it if Grandpa didn't return in a few days. Cha Won-yup immediately stopped wanting to eat. He lowered his hand with the food and worriedly thought that Grandpa was in trouble. Uncle Jong-un told the boy that Grandpa had gone far away to think about a lot of things. Cha Won-yup guessed that Jang Sami had gotten to him too. Because Sang-hee and Sang-il weren't just sniffing around, Sami wanted to get rid of everyone unwanted for Soo-yeon's wedding. First the young master, now the grandfather. It was the guy's turn, so he decided it was time to take action. Cha Won-yup sat on his knees in front of the bag of belongings. He opened it, mentally promising that he would never forget his grandfather. As he got dressed, he kept thinking that he would take care of Soo-young as Master had asked, even though his help now would not be much, but he promised that nothing would happen to her. Soo-young sat at the table sad. Her grandfather had been gone for days. She was worried that something had happened to him. A maid came to her and brought her the sack that Cha Won-yup had asked her to give to her. The girl gladly accepted it and said that she could go back to her duties. Soo-young started to open the sack. The guy gave her back the land documents that Soo-bom was accused of stealing. But there was more than just a scroll. At the bottom was a book. Seeing it, the girl opened her eyes wide with surprise and picked it up. It was a letter. Cha Won-yup was apologizing to the girl for not taking care of her properly. He warned her that by the time she read this, he would be far away. The guy explained to her that the person she's marrying isn't who she thinks he is, and even though the master, grandfather, and him aren't with her, the guy was sure she'll think of something. He asked Soo-young to leave this place as soon as possible. Before he left, Cha Won-yup gave out gold coins to all the people in the market. He climbed up the mountain thinking that he had left them enough money. Now he had no connection to this place in any way. As he climbed the height, he looked up at the building. He had lived here for over 10 years, but he couldn't stay because he had always been different. Right now, he wanted to focus on himself. Hwang was dead. The servant had informed Sanmi of this. She lay relaxed on the bed smoking a pipe. She ordered the servant to dispose of the body. The woman was glad that now no one would be able to break up this wedding. She didn't expect her grandfather to stay, so her decision to order Sang-hee and Sang-il to watch over him was the right one. Now Jang Sanmi had become the first lady of the Seol family. Now no one would stop her from doing what she had planned, not even her husband Seol Sadok. The woman lay down more comfortably on the bed and covered her eyes, thinking that this was still the beginning. After all, they had a lot to accomplish. There should be no mistakes. 5 days later, the boy was walking through the dark forest. Looking back, he was a little surprised that no one had been sent for him, so he decided to take a break. The moon was full in the sky. Cha Eun-yup was sitting by the fire and warming himself. He decided to stay here for a couple of days and then go to the mountains. After all, it would take him a year or two to learn the book. He needed something more advanced than what the Seol family had been taught. And after training, he planned to find Soo-young, even if it took a few more years. He planned for revenge and hoped that one day he could become a worthy opponent to the master himself. Cha Won-yup lay on his side near the fire. He covered his eyes, hooked his foot on a stick, stood up and picked it up. The boy smiled, took out a knife and began to chip the stick. He had been a servant all his life and decided that once this was over, he would heal the way he wanted to. Cha Eun-yup made a wooden sword out of the stick and put it forward. He thought he would gain his freedom and make himself known to the whole world. 2 years passed. Cha Eun-yup was sweeping the street from the leaves. A woman approached him. They both got up in the morning to perform duties. The maid complained that the new servant didn't want to work. The man wasn't happy with this. He started to swear loudly, but the woman shouted at him because someone might hear them. The atmosphere wasn't the same after Soo-young ran away. People were saying that the Seol family was giving up. There was glory as well as honor was no longer there. The servant and maid hoped that the young master would return to them and get married because it could bring back the greatness of the Seol family. Soo-beom appeared in front of the huge house. He looked at him sternly. The one who walked the road of evil was consumed by the dark force. He would commit atrocities, forever being an enemy. The inner demons would take over. And then the soul came to an end. But there were always those whose will was unshakable. So of the 10 best masters, only 2 remained in the original faction, not succumbing to the temptations of the dark side. JV, the legendary hero, and his rival, the righteous demon. The others bowed their heads before them. JV and the righteous demon were very humble and fair. This was a heavenly fortress, when this was where the righteous demon, Galman Hek, had settled. The old man had a very tense face. He moved his chip, and the girl in front of him exclaimed happily that she had defeated him again. The girl had defeated her grandfather for the 3rd time in a row. The girl's name was Gal Minran. She was Gal Min Hek's granddaughter. Minran clapped her hands joyfully and reminded her grandfather that he had promised her to teach her martial arts. The man pouted. The old man started to discourage that it could be dangerous, but the girl reminded resentfully that he had promised. She tearfully remarked that he wasn't going to keep his word, but the grandfather hurried to reassure her. The grandfather thought that the girl was grasping everything on the fly, so he really should have trained her. The old man had trained his granddaughter to play Go specifically to keep her away from martial arts, but it didn't work out. Gal Min Hyuk was one of the world's greatest masters. He had no interest in martial arts at all when he was a child, but his talent and physical strength were not just for books and playing Go. His master himself had begged Gal Min Hyuk until he finally convinced him to set foot in the martial arts. His family, including himself, was more attracted to science than martial arts, but somehow Min Ran, his little flower, had always dreamed of doing just that. When her granddaughter was little, she liked to run up behind her grandfather, hugging him by his big broad shoulders, but now she was more interested in her grandfather's skills, something her grandfather himself was not happy about. Suddenly, a servant came to them and announced that a foreigner was challenging Min Hyuk, and before fighting him back, the boy wanted his opinion. The man was surprised. He jumped up from his seat. It had been a long time since anyone had challenged him. His granddaughter jumped up next and shouted resentfully. But the old man promised that he would be back soon and they would talk later. The girl was left alone in the room. She was displeased that the grandfather was always changing the subject. The old man and his men went down to the stranger. The grandfather asked the guy what his name was. Subam introduced himself and announced that he didn't have a last name. The guy folded his arms and shouted that he had come to see the greatest. Everyone was surprised and thought the guy had fallen off an oak tree. They shouted to him that he was seeking death. But Su Beom explained that he didn't come to fight the Lord of the Heavenly Fortress. His true purpose was to gain experience here. The old man looked at him with an evaluating gaze. He noticed that the guy was bold, but straightforward. Min Hyuk asked him if he had played Go. Su Beom bowed and said that he had. The grandfather turned around and promised that if the guy won the game, he could get what he wanted. The game of Go was a test that all who dared to challenge the Heavenly Fortress had to pass. It was a simple test that could say a lot about a person. Go was a logical game. To win, you had to calculate your opponent's tactics. If you played well, you expanded your territory, but luck shouldn't run amok because you couldn't win without good strategy. The game was not for average minds. Min Hyuk admitted that only one person had been able to beat him at Go, but he wasn't playing against her right now, so he ordered the game to begin. It was already nightfall, but they were still playing Go. The granddaughter was watching in the doorway. The woman with her explained to her that they were playing 3 times, and whoever had 2 wins would win. The old man looked puzzled. The granddaughter was worried that her grandfather could have been beaten. She saw that the guy was not like everyone else. Su Beom was a genius after all. Everyone made the same mistakes, but he was different. Something about him the granddaughter saw. The game of Go perfectly revealed the character and personality of the player. If a person was smart and intelligent, the style of the game was like water ripples. If a person was honest and fair, then the style of play was like a mountain. Subium was like a wolf who guarded his territory and did not let anyone get in. The old man was musing in his ears as to why the guy needed a heavenly fortress. After all, if he was as talented as he said, he could join any faction. Even if Subium was a potential threat, he was still a beginner, and with the right approach, he could become a powerful master. Subam's internal energy level told Min Hyuk that the guy was on the right path. This meant to his grandfather that the young man was from a prestigious family, but he didn't understand why someone would want his status. Subium replied to him that he wanted to achieve the goal he had set for himself. After all, he couldn't let down the people dear to him. Remembering his sister, he thought that he couldn't delay. And remembering Chao and Yub, He thought that there was someone waiting for him, someone to whom he had promised a bright future. He had given his word and planned to keep it. The boy confessed to his grandfather that he wanted to become stronger as soon as possible, but the old man answered him that there were things in life that took time. He saw that Subaum was destined to become great and promised that if he was patient, he could achieve even greater things. The guy lowered his eyes. Min Hyuk swiftly moved his chip and announced that he had won. Subium thought he was leading, but was beaten. He thought it was because he was distracted by his thoughts. The guy admitted that it was his fiasco. Min Hyuk asked him that he challenged him to a duel because he really wished to fight him. Subium replied that he never wanted to fight Gal Min Hyuk because he soberly assessed his chances, but he felt that if he fought Min Hyuk, he would learn something even from the conversation. The grandfather was impressed by the young man's modesty. He called out to his granddaughter, Min Ran, to stop eavesdropping and come over to them. The girl was startled out of surprise. The girl came over. Min Hyuk introduced her. The grandfather said that Go was not just a game, it said a lot about the player. So he suggested putting the two of them in sparring. The guys looked at each other. Grandpa said that Min Ran had just started learning martial arts, but she had a steely stamina, so this was a great chance to learn her abilities. In his mind, Min Hyuk thought that if the guy really wanted to fight him, he had better wait a couple days, and then they could play another game. But the granddaughter shouted that she was only a beginner. She was outraged that he wanted her to compete with this master. But for the past 3 days, he himself had been avoiding practicing with her. The grandfather replied that the guy was her age, but the girl was not satisfied with that. She wanted him to ask her first. She announced to the grandfather that if she agreed, he would teach her every day. Min Hyuk had no problem agreeing. Min Ran agreed. The master didn't mind either, but thought grandfather was just dumping all his business on him. As time passed and the day of the duel arrived, a crowd gathered in the courtyard, all eager to see the unprecedented spectacle. Subium was determined. There was a huge crowd, but what was most surprising was their aura. Their movements were smooth like waves, but in case of chaos, they were ready to hit the rocks at any moment. And Min Hyuk could calmly douse the storm. Subium's opponent was the granddaughter of a legendary master, so the guy could not loosen his grip. Min Hyuk, watching the guy from the balcony, noticed that the guy was tense by his presence. But Min Hyuk's wife shamed her husband for exposing his own granddaughter. But the man rebuffed. The woman was disgruntled and didn't understand why he did it, because Min Ran would have a real sparring session, and the grandfather would just be engrossed in another game of Go at this time. The wife yelled at her husband that it wasn't fair to Min Ran because he had promised that he would teach her everything, but instead he was giving her a duel with a stranger. But Min Hyuk asked Seo Ji Young not to say that because he knew Min Ran well, and he was more worried about the guy's safety. The man asked his wife not to worry because he assured her that he would personally oversee that the fight would be held on the swords of the heavenly fortress. The guys stood opposite each other. The girl folded her hands in greeting and asked the young master to take care of her because she was younger and had less experience. Subeom also greeted the girl and replied that she was very humble because Min Ran was doing well. After that, the girl started the fight and was the first to attack the master. The guy fended off her punch. Min Ran put her hand on his shoulder and jumped over him, facing from behind. She landed on her feet and started attacking swiftly. Subiom fended off all her lunges and decided that she was not to be underestimated. The guy threw her arm away and swung at the girl, but she stepped back in time. Subiom was close, but Min Ran scrambled backwards, leaned on her hands and jumped back a few meters away from the master. The guy was surprised at how the girl adjusted nimbly. She was flexible and fast, so he couldn't relax. Min Ran stopped, looking intently at Subiom. She thought that there must have been a reason why grandfather chose him. Blue energy began to swirl around the girl. Min Ran said that Subiom had excellent skills, and for the first time, her high expectations were met. She put her sword behind her back and asked if he could withstand this strike as well. The guy got serious. Min Ran jumped onto the master and displayed her snow cloud sword in front of him. Subiom immediately recognized what kind of sword it was. She threw a punch, but the guy blocked it. A man shouted cheerfully from the stands, saying that his disciple was capable. It was Myungi Hai, the snowy mountain demon. The shaggy-haired man who was standing next to him frowned, saying that the man had lost the bet and had been ripped off. What kind of disciple could he be talking about? Min Ran's grandfather, watching his granddaughter, was surprised that she had achieved impressive results in a short time. And despite how the girl wielded the sword, The young man was not at all concerned about the blade that passed near her face. The boy was watching Rand closely and reacted instantly, not twitching in an attempt to dodge the blade, but looking for his opponent's mistakes. Grandfather assumed that Subom had been through many battles. The guy started repeating the snow cloud technique. Rand was shocked. The audience figured him out. The old man also noticed and couldn't believe his eyes that Subom had learned it just by looking at it a couple times. Subom ran at Minran, the girl fending off his punch, and admitted that he never ceased to amaze her because no one had ever learned a technique by observation before. But with his imitation, the guy gave himself away. The girl jumped up again and said that for him, her skills went far beyond a single technique. She swung her sword in the air and used the 7-sword Yuma technique. Subom put the sword blade in front of her, blocking the blow. The guys froze, waiting to see who would be the first to surrender. Everyone was curious who would win. Betting on Minran, the grandfather watched carefully. Minran slumped to the ground, Subom knelt down, and the girl's blade came down on his shoulder. Minran's grandmother exhaled. This was what she expected from the righteous demon's granddaughter. Rand put her hands out as a sign of respect and thanked the master for the duel because she had learned a lot. The guy responded kindly to her as well. The old man from the balcony said they were both well done and admitted that the fight was impressive. Min Hyuk asked to thank the creators of the Snow Sword and the creators of the 7 Yuma swords, Wu Gai and Shungwak Wu. The men were surprised. The granddaughter asked in amazement that the grandfather thought the master had learned the 7 swords of Yuma. The creator of this technique shouted that Rand was right because the boy couldn't have mastered his technique after looking at it just once. This technique was the culmination of years of his life. He didn't believe it. But the old man replied that he had seen for himself how the boy was able to repeat the movements. But the men demanded to check again. Min Hyuk asked Subom to repeat it because if he hadn't internalized the technique, he definitely couldn't repeat it. The creator shouted to the master to stop being reserved and show his full strength because honesty and openness would play in his favor. Subom agreed and showed the technique. Minran was amazed because he had actually shown the 7-sword Yuma. The creator was also shocked. They didn't believe that such a thing was possible. The master admitted that in the 7 swords Yuma technique, the blade moved gracefully. He admired it so much, so he traced the blade, but said that if it was considered stealing, he was willing to never use this technique again. Min Hyuk got angry at the guy in front of everyone, but there was a voice in Subom's head that told him to just listen and keep quiet. It was telepathy. The old man was asking if the guy would master the art of stealth under him, and it sounded in the guy's mind that he had been waiting for someone like him for a very long time. Min Hyuk promised that if Subom mastered the techniques of the 8 great defenders of the heavenly fortress, it would benefit him. Also, if the guy learned the 5 mysteries of the 7 Yuma swords, he would become a master. Subom stood there and listened to him tensely. He understood what the old man wanted to tell him, but he said out loud that he didn't want Min Hyuk to be his teacher. The old man got very angry. He shouted at the guy, getting so angry that his energy was directed at all the people in a huge wave. In the palm of Min Hyuk's hand, a small golden ball formed, surrounded by a black veil. He pointed it directly at the guy. Hitting him in the chest, the guy flew back to the wall with a huge force. The granddaughter was shocked. Subom was unconscious. His mouth was bleeding. The technique creator was frightened by this behavior of the master. The man frantically shouted that Subom had insulted his teacher and spit on the heavenly fortress. Min Ran frightenedly called out to her grandfather. The creator didn't understand why the Lord was so agitated by the words of a mere youth. The old man demanded that the young man be thrown into Mount Seongnam. The men took Subom under their arms. Min Hyuk shouted after them that anyone who helped the boy would meet his death. The men took Subom out and threw him on the ground. The creator was not happy about this loss and called the helpers back to the fortress. After a while, the master came to his senses. He looked at his hand, rummaged in his cloak, and pulled out a book. It was the secret manual of the 7 swords of Yuma that Wu Sung-wak had passed on to him. It was in him that the guy saw his teacher. Subom sat down looking at the book. He had experienced the greatness of the heavenly fortress firsthand, and now he would never forget the words that the world was not black and white. He remembered the voice in his head. It was Wu Sung-wak. He explained to him that when the truth was revealed, most masters would want to kill him. And until everyone fully understood Subom should keep everything secret, this would ensure that the guy would get out of here safely, and he would decide what to do next. So Su Byum refused Min Hyuk. The master, sitting on the ground and stretching his hand to the sky, said that Master Wu Sung-wak was late as the one who saved the Asura realm by handing over in front of the Battle Alliance. On the cliff, Cha Un-yap was practicing. He was performing the white crane technique. After finishing, he noticed that his sword was trembling. It was incomprehensible to him that his sword trembled every time he got into the final stance. The guy's movements became better than the ones he showed to the Gaju, but he was only familiar with the white crane technique, so he tried to perfect it. Cha Wunyap saw the white fox. The beast was looking at him. The guy noticed that the guy was looking as if he was an expert. The guy roared at the fox, and the beast, eyes bulging, jumped at Cha Wunyap, touched his back, grabbed the bag of food deftly, and chased him away. Cha Wunyap didn't have time to stop it. Touching his shoulder, the guy was surprised how the white fox could move so fast in such short steps. He didn't feel anything special on her pads, but she moved effortlessly, just on her toes. Cha Un-yup wondered if redistributing the power from his palm to his fingers would help him as well. He tried it and happily noticed that the sword began to move more naturally in each direction. Cha Un-yup shouted to the fox that her lessons were better than the seal families. The guy sat and practiced his breathing. He was already used to breathing properly, and it helped his recovery. He was storing internal energy better than he thought, but he still lacked martial arts techniques. Cha Un-yup tried swinging, but it didn't matter, because it was impossible to create a great technique with a single sword strike. He thought that he could look to other animals for inspiration, like the white fox. He thought of a snake, then a rabbit and a trout, but no one appealed to him. It was night. Suddenly, the guy saw a butterfly. He thought it was too late for a butterfly. It took off and flew close to the fire. Cha Un-yup asked it to fly away, because the sparks from the fire could get on its wings. He began to wave his sword in front of it, but the butterfly did not fly away. It sat on the tip of his sword. He watched its movements and was surprised to think that the butterfly's movements suited his technique. A year passed. Cha Un-yup continued to refine the movements until the tip of the sword moved easily like a butterfly's wing. The trajectory was drawn over and over again, but the technique the guy was perfecting couldn't be fully revealed with an ordinary sword. The focus was on form, not trajectory. Cha Un-yup had to copy the butterfly's movement with his sword. He had 4 stances, but as he was showing the 4th, he tapped the tip of the sword hard and it broke. Cha Un-yup looked at the broken sword and hummed. The weapon couldn't withstand the power of the final stance. The guy decided to go down and find a new sword. It should be flexible, able to withstand all positions. But despite the broken sword, Cha Un-yup was satisfied because when the time came for the blood butterfly technique, it would be completed. The guy gathered his things and went. The foxes got in his way. The white fox was always hanging around him, but now he didn't come alone but with his girlfriend. Cha Un-yup decided that they had come to the cave to make it their home. The guy smiled, turned around, and said this is where their paths diverged. He remembered about Su Yan. It had been 3 years since then. The girl should have gone and disappeared too. And it was time for him to take revenge and conquer the world, and the guy quickly chased off the mountain. Golden City Transportation Service was one of the 10 representative services in Hanam. Customer trust and a good reputation were vital to the transportation service. They were known for their willingness to haul any size or type of freight, but one day one incident changed everything. No one noticed the item being transported was stolen. An unknown person tampered with it, and the transportation service began to be attacked frequently during transportation. The head of the Golden City single-handedly decided to regain the lost honor of the service, but he was attacked by unknown people, after which he died. The Golden City fell, followed by the other transportation services. Meanwhile, a new organization, the Blue Dragon Bureau, began to invade their territory, indicating signs of a major conspiracy. Golden City weakened, barely kept afloat, and existed in name only. This place, too, had fallen at the hands of the enemy. The acting head of the Golden City, Song Yo-ju, was desperate. She couldn't leave things as they were. She wanted to find an escort for her mission. Her thoughts were interrupted by her brother. He asked her not to make such a face. Seo Yo-hoon was the deputy leader of the Golden City. He worriedly warned her that if she walked around with such a face, it would cause the others to worry. The girl agreed with him. She noticed that her brother came early and asked if he found anything. The guy looked around excitedly. Song Yo-hoon replied that the person he found looked skillful, but was a little out of control, but that wasn't a problem for Yo-ju. She was just glad that they had found someone. so she offered to meet him. They were going to send transportation, but she was sure to be attacked. The girl knew that. So she thought that if she was guarded by someone skilled in martial arts, it would be safer. The head of the city decided to give it a try. A man with blue hair sat with a bored look, lazily propping his chin up with his hand. Next to him sat a guy hiding his face with a hat. Yeoju looked them over and thought that she wouldn't judge a book by its cover, so she decided to listen to them. The guy with blue hair asked about the goods they were going to transport. He immediately warned her that he knew how the Golden City was doing and promised that if the head clearly explained what needed to be done, they would act. Yeoju tensed. Her brother called out to her sister. The girl finally replied that they needed to escort the empty wagon. They had lost a lot of valuable things, including their reputation due to the constant robbery, to honor their father, who protected the wagons until the very end. Yeoju, as the head of the transportation service, had to restore their reputation. The man in the hat didn't think that the head would be able to gather the representatives of the 10 fallen services with his protest. The girl thought that this man was able to figure out her plan. It was worth it to tell her about the empty wagon. The head wanted everyone to realize how nasty the Blue Dragon Bureau was. The man in the hat stood up and said that they were either naive or stupid, so he decided to end this conversation first. Yeoju jumped up from her seat and said that she appreciated his offer to help, but it was none of his business what their reasons and circumstances were. But the man had already turned around and walked away. The head was not happy with this behavior. The man asked everyone to calm down and continue. The guy with the hat went outside. There were 8 people sitting on the branches. The guy sensed them and demanded to come down. The man with blue hair told the head of the city to gather all the trained workers in one place for safety reasons. Yeoju didn't understand what he was talking about, but the man had already gotten up and said with an anticipatory smile that it had already started. Everyone went outside. There was already a fight started. Yeoju was scared and didn't realize what was going on. When the warriors noticed the head and her brother, they rushed at them to kill them. But the man was quick to deal with them. He didn't benefit at all if the head was killed. The girl was surprised at how quickly and deftly he dealt with the mercenaries. Suddenly, a stone flew into another mercenary from the side. It was thrown by the guy in the hat. The guy took off his hat and it was Cha Wunyup. He grudgingly asked if they could finish this properly. All the mercenaries were killed. The man with blue hair asked what they were going to do with them. Cha Wunyup suggested burying the bodies so the enemies wouldn't find them. The guy turned to the head and asked if they were okay. The girl replied that they were okay because of them. They were ready for it to happen one day. The man scratching the back of his head lazily said that they were dealing with guys who couldn't fight back decently. Cha Wunyup grudgingly replied that he had barely dealt with one, but the man didn't like what he said. After all, he was protecting the masters. The head and her brother, watching them, decided that the guys both did a great job and didn't even understand why the two agreed to such a third-rate job. Yeoju interrupted their argument by saying that the situation would be under control now. She wanted to finish the conversation with them that they hadn't finished. The man with blue hair poured himself a drink while the guys wondered if he was the sword demon everyone was talking about. Seo Yo-hoon was most surprised that he, Eom Han-pil, was the ghost of the bandit who defeated the northern twin ghosts in Song Dok-ho. The man corrected him. He wasn't the ghost of the bandit, but the ghost of the sword master Sung. The guy asked where the rest of his group was. Han-pil replied that Cha Wunyup had gone to look around and admitted that he didn't know him well enough. Song Yo-hoon thought they had known each other for a long time. The man briefly said that they had met about 2 months ago. Han-pil was told that there was a suspicious gambling den nearby, so he thought he'd find something interesting, but he ended up getting ripped off. The stealthy kid, who had only recently become an adult, had hit the jackpot in illegal gambling. Han-pil saw that he had a sword. He decided to stalk him and check him out. The man saw him leave the building, but Cha Wunyup spoke first. He thought the man was cheating people and stealing their money. Han-pil grabbed his sword and said his name so the guy would realize who he was talking to. Then he said he had a thing for him, but he wanted to wait because he wanted to show him how big the world was first. They came to a place where no one was around to fight. Before the fight, Han-pil asked the guy's name. Cha Wunyup replied that he didn't have a proper name to introduce himself. The guy decided to ask how good the man was compared to the top masters before he began. He felt the man was strong, but he didn't know much about him. The man didn't say anything to him, but decided to attack right away, quickly shouting out what the guy would recognize in a fight. The guy started to fight. Han-pil couldn't get him. He shouted in anger and attacked with all his might. The guy recoiled. Cha Won-yup watched Han Pil fight and realized that Han Pil was good, and thanks to the man himself, he realized how strong he had become. It was important for Cha Won-yup to understand his opponent's intentions than to react to his provocations. So he proposed a bet. If the man won, the guy promised to give all the money he could win and all the information he possessed, and was even willing to settle all matters. But if he won, Han Pil would have to help him for 6 months without complaining. The man with blue hair didn't understand what was wrong with the guy. He didn't mind about the bet, but Han Pil asked Cha Won-yup what exactly he wanted. Because if it was something dirty, the man refused to get involved. The guy admitted that he was looking for someone, but if he was going to look alone, it would take a long time. The guys started fighting. They got into a stance. The guy summoned a second form of the blood butterfly technique, a fluttering blood butterfly in the wind. The guy ran to attack Han Pil. The man stared at him perplexed, not understanding what kind of technique the guy had used. Cha Won-yup threw a punch. The man used all his strength, but he was still pushed away and Han Pil fell to the ground. The guy walked over to him and held out his hand. The man was now obliged to keep him company. He accepted the help and was unhappy that he had messed with someone he didn't understand. Han Pil was impressed by the guy's technique, and he asked what exactly his inner strength was. Because it wasn't easy to reach that level at his age, he asked him to tell him what faction he was a member of and who his master was. Because if the kid was a threat to the martial arts world, he would have to get rid of him. Cha Won-yup thought for a moment and decided that the man was from some righteous faction. The guy didn't like misunderstandings, so he decided to answer something to avoid conflict. Cha Won-yup gave the name of the medical reference book he drew strength from. It was called Great Yin Breathing Technique, and admitted that he didn't belong to any faction and didn't have a master. The book was his master's. He took the theory as a basis. This was the first time the man had heard of such a book, but it was okay because Cha Won-yup himself gave it a title since the book didn't have one. The guy suddenly asked what Han Pil's plan was. The man was puzzled because now Cha Won-yup was deciding for him. The guy assumed that the people from the righteous faction were sniffing around the gambling den. He thought there was something wrong with the martial arts world. That was why the man was here. Cha Won-yup offered the man to join him to achieve his goal. He needed to know where Han Pil was originally headed. The man offered to go to Hanam. This story he told his brother and sister with a smile. Han Pil didn't know the man's name, but his butterfly technique impressed him, so he called him simply Butterfly Man. The man said that he had participated in many fights, but this was the first time he had seen such a beautiful technique. Suddenly, Cha Won-yup appeared from the back and asked why they were talking about him. The man offered to talk. Yeoju looked at the guy and thought that he was too calm and experienced for his age. The girl thanked the guys for helping her. Han Pil said it was their job as bodyguards. But it was hard for the girl to call them just bodyguards. Her brother worriedly called out to her. Yeoju sadly said that their purpose was to restore the message in all of Hanam and to raise the Golden City from its knees. The head was willing to do anything to restore the honor of their service. So she asked for their help. She promised to give them a home, and if she sent a wagon, she asked them to protect her loved ones. The girl's tears flowed. Her brother was also concerned. Cha Won-yup refused to work. He explained that the house was the second problem. The first was the transportation, which included security. It would all make brother and sister go into disadvantage. So the guy refused to work. He offered to help him make the Golden City a service that could provide compensation. The girl looked at him perplexed. Cha Won-yup reached into his pocket for something, saying that her welfare was more valuable to him. He pulled out a sheet and handed it to the head. It was a promissory note from the bank. Yeoju took it in her hands. The guy said that the transportation could be over in a few months, and it could take years to recover the Golden Dragon. So to reassert their name again, they needed solid grounds. If the girl took the promissory note, she could pay off the loan for the house, then it would be theirs. Cha Won-yup didn't need it, so he suggested leaving the documents with either the governor or her father. Yeoju didn't understand why he was helping her. The guy replied that what he wanted took time, and if the Golden City regained its reputation and things got better, they would owe him. It was up to the guy to stay or leave, and no one had the right to stop him. But for now, he promised to stay here as a bodyguard. Yeoju replied that they would agree to such terms. Han Pil was shocked that Cha Won-yup was making such broad gestures, and he couldn't even be offered a beer. But the guy replied that it would do some good and his beer wouldn't. Besides, there was plenty of booze here. He offered a drink to the head and deputy. Cha Won-yup looked at them and remembered Su Bom and Su Yan. He wondered what Subom was doing now and where Suyon was. The guy thought that what the Golden City was experiencing had already happened at the New Year's festival, so everything was connected. And he planned to upset the plans. A man sat in a chair, a servant stood in front of him and reported back. The man fearfully announced that it meant they were failing. The man was the leader of the Blue Dragon Bureau, Kwak Chi-o. The deputy head of the Blue Dragon Bureau, Kwak Gi-ryang, reported to him, bowing down. He said that the victims of the disaster had moved to the Golden Dragon, and that was where all the attention was now focused. Gi-ryang admitted to the chapter that he couldn't believe that the Golden City had turned into an iron fortress using the victims of the disaster. He had been there and seen it with his own eyes. The head dug his nails hard into his chair. He was displeased with his deputy because he ordered him to monitor the situation instead of resorting to force. The deputy told him that the skills of the two masters they met were beyond their expectations. The head wondered if there were masters in the fallen city who could deal with 10 people. He wondered if they were able to recognize them. The guy was going to recognize them by their scars. But the bodies had been disposed of. Chi-o promised that after they settled this case, then they would bypass the Seol family. After that, they would take the position of the leading family. The man strictly said that there should be no mistakes, the deputy agreed. Gi-ryang left the head chamber and walked down the street, thinking that the most unfortunate thing was for those two masters was that the service was on the verge of bankruptcy. Next time, the guy decided that he would meet them in person. There were a lot of people walking around in the yard. The deputy watched the people who were victims of the disaster. He knew they were worried about the coming of winter, but they didn't look worried right now. He looked at the main residence. The head was coming out of there accompanied by bodyguards. The girl was ordering them to do as she said. Gi-ryang immediately recognized Han Pil and Cha Wong-yup. After all, they were the ones who had killed 10 of his guys. His chest was boiling with the desire to kill them right now, so he decided to personally check them out in a minute to see what kind of martial artists they were. Yo-ju was walking in front, with Cha Yun-yup and Han Pil walking behind her. Suddenly, the guy stopped. The man asked why he was standing up. Cha Yun-yup whispered, asking him to be quiet. He said he could feel someone following them. The man looked at him questioningly and asked how he realized it. The guy whispered that there was a person in the mansion that he saw for the first time, and once he saw someone's face, he could never forget it again. Cha Won-yup went ahead and asked Han Pil to stay with the landlady and went to lure him out himself. The girl worriedly asked about the guy, but the man smiled friendly and asked her to follow him. Han Pil put his hand on her shoulder and wanted to lead her, but the girl brushed his hand away. The man asked the guy if he could manage without a sword. Cha Wong-yup replied that the unknown man was too curious, so he would definitely show himself if no one was with him. He himself was curious about something about this guy. Cha Wong-yup warned that if Han Pil followed him, there would be trouble. The man was 6 years older than the guy, but he commanded him. Han Pil had no choice but to stay with the head. The guy stood around the corner. He didn't understand why the guy distanced himself from the others and didn't accompany the head. But it was to his advantage, so he went out to him to find out. He ran after Cha Won-yup, but when he ran out into the clearing, he didn't see him. Gi-ryang was standing there looking confused as to where the kid could have gone. Behind him, Cha Won-yup appeared. He was playing with a butterfly. The kid assumed the stranger was from the Blue Dragon Bureau. Gi-ryang turned around and angrily said that he had good instincts. The guy let go of the butterfly and asked Gi-ryang if he wanted to fight. Cha Won-yup got into a stance. Gi-ryang grinned that the guy was going to do it with his bare hands. The guy asked him not to worry about him and start attacking already. After some more words, Gi-ryang attacked Won-yup. The guy immediately noticed that the deputy had a bad stance. Cha Un-yup swung his fist, but Gi-ryang dodged. The force passed by and formed a mark on the ground. Gi-ryang was surprised that the guy was able to cause such pressure with just his fist. Both Gi-ryang and Cha Won-yup swung, but neither one hit. The deputy only left a scratch on the guy's arm. Gi-ryang was surprised that the guy dodged his punch and released his claws. Noticing them, Cha Won-yup thought that the guy had the potential to become a consummate master and asked him if the claws were real. In his thoughts, he thought that it would probably hurt Gi-ryang a lot if he broke the claws under the root. Gi-ryang pointed his claws at the guy. This ghost shadow claw technique of his had reached perfection at the 8th step. The guy pounced on Cha Un-yup. He put his fist forward. He wanted to strip his opponent's arm, but Gi-ryang grabbed his shoulder. Un-yup threw him back with his energy. Now the guy decided to split his power and attack quickly. Cha Un-yap directed a powerful energy at his opponent. The guy put out his hands, defending himself from this onslaught. The guy stopped striking because Gi Ryang blocked all his attacks. He looked at him perplexed. The deputy ran at the guy. Cha Un-yup was standing in a stance. Gi Ryang attacked him with all his might, but he couldn't even land a critical strike. Yeoju and Han Pil stood aside. The girl turned to the man, who was leaning on the wall and standing with his eyes closed. She offered to intervene. But the man replied that it was a normal thing for a guy to do. After all, he wasn't just fighting one-on-one, but if things got hot, he promised to intervene. Han Pil urged the girl to see that Cha Un-yup had already adapted and avoided all the punches. The man admitted that he knew he had exceptional abilities, but the guy was becoming more and more unpredictable each time. He certainly supposed the guy might not be bad, but he had still seen cases of people with such talent doing terrible things. The man already wanted them to finish quickly because he wanted to eat. Yeoju was perplexed by the sudden change of topic. Gui Ryang threw more and more punches, but was surprised that his opponent dodged better each time and repelled each attack. He swung, and before Un-yup opened up a lot of Gi Ryang's unprotected spots, the guy realized how to repeat his opponent's technique and slashed the guy's neck with his nails. Gi Ryang bounced back and looked at his hand unhappily. There was blood flowing from his neck. Han Pil guessed that the guy was copying his opponent. Cha Un-yup stopped, taking his hand, and smugly said that he understood everything and figured out the basics. But Gui Ryang was shocked that the guy was able to comprehend the ghost shadow claw. Cha Un-yup grabbed a stick from the ground and decided to fight seriously, pointing it at his opponent, and announced that he would now use it. Gi Ryang snorted and attacked the guy again, but the guy didn't let the guy attack and threw punches. And then a lot of red butterflies appeared around. It was the blood butterfly sword technique. The guy made an instant strike. Yeoju was amazed that it was a red butterfly. Han Pil was watching them closely. Gi Ryang fell on his back and angrily asked what faction the guy was from. Cha Un-yup replied that he wasn't a member of any faction. Un-yup didn't know what faction the opponent was from, but said that because of people like him, the woman he was looking for had to hide. The guy turned away and said that in order to find her, he needed to either destroy his organization or any other he thought would be involved, and warned him that if he wanted to kill him, he had better send someone stronger, because he didn't have time to babysit him. Gi Ryang roared angrily and swooped at the guy from the back with all his might, but Un-yup turned around and threw him away from him. The guy flew a very long distance away and was unconscious when he stopped. Un-yup finally said that people like that guy could only be brought back to reality by losing. Han Pil offered to kill Gi Ryang, but Cha Un-yup disagreed because the others would start attacking stealthily. The guy walked forward and said that since an expert of this level was behind it, the others would come in droves. Han Pil grudgingly reminded that he was one of the top 100 masters of the hypersensitivity technique, so his deduction was better. The guy, when he heard about the hypersensitivity technique, remembered that Sanmi used such a technique. A man came to the head to pick up medicine for his father. The man was grateful to her because his father's condition was improving. The guy sat on the bench. Cha Un-yup was kneading his arm. The man recognized that the guy's plan had worked, and now Gal Min-hyuk was being praised here and there. The man with blue hair asked Cha Un-yup if he was surprised that his opponent was stronger than he expected. Han Pil advised the guy to start with the Phalaenopsis technique next time. Cha Un-yup didn't know such a technique, but then he realized that was what he called his blood butterfly technique and corrected Han Pil. But the man didn't care. He asked the guy to fight with a sword next time. Cha Un-yup hesitated because to demonstrate the full power of the blood butterfly technique, his sword was not enough. That guy Cha Un-yup had defeated with his bare hands, but there was no telling how much stronger he would be against. The guy suddenly stood up. The man asked where he was going. Blown up, Un-yup replied that he would go to the gun shop. Because he needed a new sword, Han Pil remained seated. Cha Un-yup ended up choosing a sword, walking down the street looking at it. But as he passed the door, he suddenly noticed another part of the store. He went in there and started to choose a sword, taking the weapon in his hands, thinking which one he should choose. A man approached him. He took the weapon from the guy and said that they did a good job with this one. Almost everything in this store was made by this man. But Cha Un-yup only looked at the ones that weren't made by the man. The guy replied that compared to his weapons, they looked much better. The man interrupted him and sadly said that his son had made these, and only those who knew Ben Gi could find the differences. Cha Un-yup asked where his son was now. The man replied that he had lost his mind, dropped his hammer, and ran away. The man hoped his son was okay. The guy replied to him that his son had outstanding abilities and he was sure he was okay. The man imagined that Benji could be chained up in some crypt right now, picking up the hammer again if he was still alive. The lad was silent. The blacksmith asked what kind of weapon the lad was looking for. Chaon Yop replied that he needed a sword that could withstand flexible fluttering movements. The man went to the nightstand and pulled out a whip-like weapon. Instead of a sword, it was a ribbon. Chaon Yop took it in his hands and asked if it could even be called a sword. The man replied that it had pierced many people after spinning aimlessly in the air. Chaon Yop tried it and decided it was the right thing. He asked how much money the blacksmith wanted for it. The man let him just take it because he hadn't had a heart-to-heart talk with anyone in a long time. The guy thanked him and told him that he had a premonition that he would one day meet the creator of the sword, and when the time came, he promised to repay him. Chaon Yup went outside and started doing some tricks and trying out the sword. Han Pil with 2 bags and Yeoju watched him. They liked what a beautiful sword control technique the guy had. Han Pil, looking at him, thought that the guy had enough strength to break his 10th star attack. Looking closely at Unyup, thought he was the kind of guy who hid his true feelings. Yeoju watched the man. Suddenly Yo-hoon came over to them. He called out to his sister. The head asked him where he was. The guy was out for a walk. A lot of people started coming to them. People were laughing, talking, and it seemed to the head and her deputy that the town had become like before. Yo-hong admitted that if this calmness will always be, he could not dream of more. But the chapter grew sad and remembered the chapter that had caused them to lose their reputation, and thought that as long as there were such bandits, they would only dream of peace. There was a risk that the country could be attacked. Yeoju called her brother and suggested that he get ready to go. Han Pil and Cha Eun-yup were sitting together with his brother and sister having a drink. The man turned to the guy and said he saw Cha Eun-yup mastering the sword technique. The blue-haired man confessed that he had never seen a sword handled like that, laughing and dancing. That time, Cha Eun-yup had disobeyed the man and fought with his bare hands. But now the man was sure that the boy had realized how important the sword was. He asked if he would listen to his advice now. The guy didn't think the bear would be handing out martial arts advice to him. The head looked at them. With a cough, she interrupted their conversation and informed them that it was time for them to get ready for their trip. But before that, she wanted to hear stories about their skills, so she asked them to share them. The girl started with Cha Eun-yup and asked who he was looking for. The guy told about the family he lived in and briefly said that some circumstances forced him to leave it, and said he was looking for someone who was kind to him. Han Pil assumed it was a woman. The guy replied that the woman was wise, so he thought she was doing well without his help. The man asked if there was a reason why he had to help her. Cha Eun-yup replied that even though the girl had passed, she had always remained kind. Han Pil asked another question. He was wondering why the guy needed martial arts. The guy replied that there was someone else he wanted to defeat if they met. He felt like the master was watching him, and it was bothering him, so he wanted to fight him. Cha Eun-yup told a lot about himself and decided to finally give his name. Han Pil waited for this moment and asked him grudgingly if he could remember his title and stop calling him Bear. The guy didn't know whether to call him Sword Ghost or Dream Master. The man replied that his lip would fall off if he called him Young. The guy replied that first the man should find his parents to call him Hen, and then he changed the subject to Han Pil telling his story. Han Pil waited for Cha Eun-yup to pour alcohol into his glass, grudgingly noting that the guy couldn't be argued with. The man got up and excused himself to the restroom, saying he hadn't gotten so drunk in a long time, and the blue-haired man left. The guy looked at him unhappily. Yeoju noticed that Master Song was attached to the boy. He told the girl something, from which she realized that he was also looking for someone. The girl's brother asked in surprise when they had time to talk. The girl, bringing a shot glass to her lips, froze from the suddenness of the question in embarrassment. Master Song stood in a dark alley. 3 guys appeared in front of him. Yul-gae, Mu-gae, Ho-gae. The man asked them if they had found out anything. The guys replied that they hadn't found everyone. They told him that one person was heading to Mudan Mountain. They never found the other. Han Pil was not happy. He had been looking for them for 3 years. The man held a scroll in his hands and handed it to Ho-gae. He asked for a letter to be delivered to the Mudan Mountains and warned that if his guess was correct, the man would show up after the letter. And the second one he thought would come from Anhui province, so he asked the boys to keep an eye on him. One of the guys said that the young man who was with them also looked capable, but the man immediately said that it wasn't Cha Eun-yup because he was looking for a Shaolin master. He warned them not to underestimate his strength. Han Pil warned that in the crazy world of martial arts, the guy could become an enemy. He showed the guys the pendant and reminded them that they could only face him all together. An assistant reported to the chief. He told them that Guy Ryong had dropped out of the mission after a direct confrontation. The guy had returned late at night after the duel. He had suffered serious physical and mental wounds, so he had now gone into closed-door training to recover. Ham Jin-kyung was a martial arts expert. He also revealed that the guy's fingertips were all mangled and his nails were broken. The man in charge couldn't believe that Ji Ryong had encountered such a professional in Hanam. The man said that Kwok Gi Ryong would investigate his opponent and warned that no one else would meet him until Gi Ryong destroyed him. The chief ordered Jin Kyung to dispatch the 3 demons of the northern forest. The man was surprised that the chief wanted to send all 3. The man replied that 1 failure was enough for them. The price of a second mistake would be too high. By the first failure, the man in charge was referring to the wedding of the Seol family. The man got up from his throne and laughingly replied that it made him the laughingstock of the entire alliance. Jin Kyung was surprised that the chief was really going to marry a girl from a family of such low status. The man came down the stairs and replied that she was the first person to introduce the word failure to her. It was Soo-young that he was supposed to marry. Jin Kyung promised to find her and make her pay for everything. The man in charge said that now he should have had no qualms about sending 3 demons at once. Because it was carelessness that made Gi Ryong like this, the head believed that Han Jin-kyung wouldn't mess up his plans. The man was the current head of the Sochon Martial Arts Alliance, Yayul Sa-an. He gloated over how Gi Ryong had become. Master Song was dousing himself with water. He was hungover. Cha Won-yup, who was standing next to him, was not happy and asked his comrade to get ready. The guy unhappily started muttering. Suddenly, Han Pil's assistant appeared from around the corner. The man was not happy to see him again. Folding his hands, he went and said that they had to get rid of the people from the Blue Dragon Bureau and suggested Cha Won-yup to go first because it was like he had a stomachache. The man made his way to the aide, leaned against the wall, and asked him why he was out of breath and where the others were. The deputy replied that it was an emergency. They had learned that one of the people they were looking for was on his way here, and also reported that this man was being pursued by assassins from the Black Assassins. Master Song was confused. There were many assassins in the world. He didn't understand why them. He desperately covered his eyes with his hand, assuming that after 3 years of waiting, he would surely cause them trouble. Han Pil had ordered the guy to follow him because he had to save him now. The man in the hat was being chased by several men. A gust of wind made the hat fly off his head. It turned out to be a girl. She had made one mistake, and now she was being chased. 10 days ago, the girl was quickly eating her food. A tipsy man took her sword from the table. After looking it over, he said the sword was magnificent. The man asked the girl where she had gotten such a valuable thing. The girl felt bad that he had sat down with her, only spoiling the impression of the meal. She stood up and took her weapon away from him and told him that if he wanted to pretend to know martial arts, he should have taken off his gold ring. The man angrily swung his sword at her, but the girl not only deftly evaded the blow, but also removed his pants. Now, running away from the assassins, she didn't realize if rich people always hired such mercenaries. All the girl's childhood was spent in the mountains, and she just wanted to see the world. The girl stopped, drew her sword, and thought that instead of running away, she would kill them all at once. Suddenly, from the side, the girl saw her grandfather. He looked confused. She asked him to stay away from her, but the grandfather turned out to be one of the assassins. He threw a purple stone on a string at her and was about to attack her, but Cha Eun-yup managed to strike first. The girl shouted who he was. The guy didn't answer but started fighting the assassins at once. The other mercenaries saw Cha Eun-yup fighting and decided to run away. One of the mercenaries running away thought that the guy was a pro because he killed their leader with just one punch, so they decided to retreat urgently. The man didn't notice how a powerful man grew in front of him and hit his chest. It was Master's son. He powerfully threw the mercenary away from him. Sinhead, seeing Cha Eun-yup, was surprised and asked what he was doing here. The guy replied that the man was behaving strangely, so he decided to follow him. But Han Pil didn't believe it because he would have felt the tale. The guy replied that he was here earlier and decided to wait for him. The girl asked who they were. The guy said they could talk and went to look around the area himself. The girl was puzzled, but Master Song asked her not to take it to heart because the guy was always like this. He decided to ask the girl directly and reached into his inner pocket. He pulled out a stone on a string and asked if she had one. The girl had one hanging around her neck. She happily pulled it out, a little surprised that the man had one too. The stranger asked about the guy with the sword, but Han Pil said he didn't have one. Cha Eun-yap chased after the masked girl. She had needles in her hair, untied her hair, and threw them at the guy. One needle he managed to catch, but it hurt his cheek. He swung and sent the weapon straight at the girl. The mercenary landed near a tree holding her sore spot. The guy walked up to her, holding one needle in his hands. He asked her how she got such a weapon. He demanded her to quickly tell him where the creator of these invisible needles was. But the girl, hiding her eyes, decided to lie that she didn't know what he meant. Cha Eun-yap, bringing the needle close to her face, said threateningly that he had promised Chon Ri-jikon that he would find his missing son, and he felt he had a hand in this weapon. He brought the tip of the needle close to the girl's throat and promised that if she told him everything, he would let her go. The mercenary looked frightened, but after a moment she laughed and replied that Chon Ri-jikon would spend the rest of her life in a dungeon with a hammer. The guy assumed that she was the one who kidnapped him. The girl was choked up with anger. She said that her brother and grandfather died by his hand. She promised that black assassins would hunt him down. The girl had died after that. They were all her family, but the boy didn't understand how she could talk about family when she had stolen someone else's son. He looked regretfully at the needle and went back inside. Master Song inquired if the guy had taken care of the escaped black assassins. The guy grabbed his head. The man didn't understand why he was chewing over it since it didn't even concern him. Cha Eun-yap replied that it was personal, and asked who the girl was. Master Song replied that she was his sister. The man heard that she was in trouble trying to find him, so he came. The girl's name was Seo Gyo Young. She thanked Cha Eun-yap for helping her. The guy asked if she too was from Gabang, a group of beggars of unknown origin. The girl was offended by the remark because she didn't look like a beggar. Cha Eun-yap replied that he asked that because her brother looked like he was from Gabang. The guys came to Yeoju's head. Han Pil introduced his sister to the girl and asked her to take care of her. Yeoju asked her brother to escort the girl inside. The chapter looked back and forth at the man and then at the brother who led Gyugyeon. Han Pil told Yeoju that he had some business to take care of now. He asked to let his sister stay with them for a while. Yo-young went with Yo-hoon, excitedly noticing that their house was cool. The mansion of the famous delivery service stood out. Yo-hoon introduced himself and asked the girl to let them know if anything was wrong. The girl thanked him, took his hand in a friendly way, and suggested that they switch to you, and since she was older, asked to be allowed to call him Yeo-hoon Yee's brother. Yo-hoon awkwardly agreed. Master Song asked the head to allow his sister to participate in the transportation mission because his sister was a capable master. The girl agreed if he vouched for her. The man thanked her and told her that he had already talked to her while they were traveling. There was a problem. Yeoju was agitated. Master Song told her that his sister was being pursued by assassins, and also Gyo Yeon had defeated one of the best Blue Dragon experts. They could come for revenge. The man was worried about the safety of the chapter. The purpose of the mission was the trip itself. They didn't want the chapter to risk themselves. Cha Eun-yap stepped forward and said that right now the service was short of manpower because of the refugee worries. And if she stayed in a conspicuous mansion, even the Blue Dragon wouldn't dare to attack. But Yeoju refused to give the mission to them because the masters helped them, so their business was her business. And without the head, the importance of the mission was disappearing. The girl said the Golden City wouldn't be worth anything if the head hid behind the backs of others and shifted the responsibility of defense from herself. She wanted to forever remember the value of the name that would be cleared by this mission. Lowering her eyes, she said her father would have had the same attitude. But now the head was her, so she had to be a worthy example. And even though it was risky, she was willing to die. Yeoju believed that the guys wouldn't let that happen. The blue-haired guy turned to Cha Eun-yap and said that there was nothing left for them to do. The head had made her decision. The guy replied that as chaperones they must obey. The procession of an empty wagon, the most ordinary wagon with the flag of the Golden City. The purpose of the trip was the chapter and those who accompanied it. Once Cha Eun-yap leaves the central area, whoever decided to harm the Golden City would soon reveal themselves. The deputy head, Song Yo-hoon, also wanted to join, but he decided to stay at the mansion to take care of his father and the refugees. Yo-yeon happily said goodbye to Yo-hoon and promised that she would return safely. Her brother was puzzled when he became her brother. The fifth day came. Han Pil was driving the carriage. In the carriage sat Cha Eun-yup, Gyo Yeon, and the head herself. It was already the 5th day, but nothing had happened. Gyo Yeon's brother was telling about Cha Eun-yup that he only sleeps, eats, and practices with his sword. She started talking to the guy in an informal speech. The guy asked why she was talking to him like that. They had a small fight over what to call whom. The guy asked the girl to leave him alone. But Gyo Yeon got mad and yelled that he would call her Nuna. The chapter asked them to calm down. Han Pil's sister asked Yeoju to tell the guy to stop, because they have to establish a hierarchy. The girl was sure that it couldn't be left like that, especially by the time the chapter and her brother will get married. Here Yeoju was taken aback and looked at Gyo Yeon in surprise. She blushed. Her sister thought that she and her brother were dating because she heard her brother bringing up Lady Song every time in the mansion. Yeoju was shocked and blushed even more. The conversation was overheard by Han Pil. He didn't understand why his sister was talking nonsense again. Suddenly, a man noticed something from the side and the wagon stopped. Cha Eun-yup asked what was wrong. The blue-haired man said there were some rascals on the road. His sister asked what was going on. His brother told her that some bandits were blocking their way, and it didn't look like they were sent by black assassins. Cha Eun-yup and Gyo Yeon got out of the wagon. The old men laughed that the guys had compared them to second-rate assassins. One of them demanded to give them the head. Han Pil was the first to attack the old man, his sister called out to him worriedly. The man facing the old man felt that the bandits were unusual. Their martial arts were different. The blue-haired man threw back his arm, swung with all his might, hitting the spot where the old man had just been. The bandit jumped back, chuckling. He recognized that the man was no bad guy. The blue-haired man remained silent, putting his sword behind his back. The man introduced himself. He was the demon lord of the withered trees. Han Pil knew the legend that was already 10 or more years old, but he didn't think he would ever meet them in a place like this. The demon lord of the withered trees was called Den Song Lag. He was a little surprised that such a young guy knew his name. The demon pounced on Han Pil, bringing his long fingers closer to him. The man threw punches. Gyo Yeon said they should intervene, but Cha Eun-yup ordered not now. He said that if the others joined the fight, so would they, and asked the girl to trust that the man could handle it while they concentrated on protecting the head and the wagon. Looking at the two old men, the guy thought that they were definitely in on that group of attackers. Cha Eun-yup guessed in his mind that they were the ones he was looking for, the instigators of all this. The old man brushed off the man's blows with a laugh and said that he was sorry that such a level-headed man had tangled with a woman from a poor organization. The demon promised to make the head suffer before he killed her. Han Pil got very angry, swinging around, promising to make him a pile of kindling. The old man jumped up and evaded the blow. Then the man struck the spot where the demon was supposed to stand. But Den Song Lag, jumping high, flew at the man, swinging his clawed hand. Cha Eun-yup intervened in the fight, chopping the demon in two with his dodgy sword. When the guy stopped, he ordered Han Pil not to let his anger take over him and asked him to gather himself. One of the old men recognized Cha Eun-yup, for it was he who had broken Kwak Gi-ryang's fingernail. The cute old man with a weapon that had a spiked ball on one end and a blade on the other was called the Benevolent Smile, Wan Ga-hu. The second fire-wielding one, who recognized the guy, was called the Demonic Palm of Crimson Flame, Chok Pal Gi. The two of them swooped down on the guys. Cha Eun-yup prepared for a clash, ordered the guys to defend the wagon, and ordered if anyone approached the wagon to attack all at once. Chok Pal Gi attacked first. He aimed his fire straight at the guy. Wan Ga-hu attacked next, but Cha Eun-yup fended off all their blows. The brother and sister were standing near the wagon. Gyo Yeon decided to intervene to return the favor to the guy. The girl ran to help, using the cloud ladder art technique, shouted to her brother to keep the head safe. Cha Eun-yup was fighting Wan Ga-hu. Fire flew from above, but the girl put out her sword to protect the guy. Gyo Yeon suggested that he fight together so that they could finish this quickly and continue the expedition. They fought off their attacks while standing with their backs to each other. The guy asked the girl to go back to the wagon, but Gyo Yeon didn't agree because she didn't like being owed. The frighteningly cute grandfather suggested to be nicer to the kids. He pointed his sword at them and promised that they would enjoy the feast today. Cha Eun-yup noticed from the grandfather's hands that the kid with the broken fingernail gave his greeting. The grandfather laughed. The guy swung around and promised that he would be polite too. Cha Eun-yup fought with Wan Ga-hu. Gyo Yeon fought with Chok Pal Gi. Wan Ga-hu swung, but the guy quickly dodged and immediately attacked back. The grandfather was surprised to see that the guy used Galman Hyuk's technique. Cha Won-yap smugly said that he showed how to use it against monsters like him. Gyu-yeon fought with the fire grandfather. The girl deftly dodged the attacks. Chok Pal-gai tilted his head and admitted that the girl was talented. Suddenly, the old man cackled and fell backwards. A sword landed in the ground beside him. Hanpil ran towards them. He grabbed his sword and said they were advancing towards the wagon. He promised to bind the grandfather's legs so he couldn't move. The man drew his sword and pounced on the old man. A fierce battle ensued. Hanpil noticed his red eyes and thought he was being pushed by his equipment. The man pushed him away and Chok Pal-gai fell to the ground. He stood up, raised his hands and roared. Fiery red energy gathered around him. The grandfather put his hands together and decided to fight the master with all his might. He launched red tongues of flame at the man. The man put his sword in front of him and held back the powerful stream with all his might. The skin on his arm began to peel off, but Hanpil courageously stood and held back the attack. The girl gathered her strength, put out her sword, using her technique to cut with a single blow. Blood spurted from the demon's mouth. He said about some shaman and that he raised a strange man. The girl turned to him. She didn't understand what the demon said. Yu-young wiped her mouth from the blood, but suddenly sat down. Her brother ran up to her and asked if she was okay. Yeoju came out of the wagon to see if anyone was hurt. She saw Gyu Yeon on her knees and her brother with her, helping her up. The master's hand was red, the girl exclaimed loudly when she noticed. Everyone stirred. The last demon saw her. His gaze fixed on her, and he ran towards the head. Hanpil ran after him. The old man swung at Yeoju with a creepy smile. The girl frightenedly awed. Cha Won-yop's sword circled the old man's weapon. The guy used the first blood butterfly technique, the blood butterfly dance. The guy pulled his weapon and whipped the grandfather's back with his sword. The old man fell to his knees. Hanpil and Yeon ran up to the head to ask how she was. The old man still wouldn't stop. He told Hanpil that he couldn't defeat him that way. Cha Won-yap called out to the old man and said that his opponent was him. The grandfather took a swing at the guy. He started twirling his stick and giggling madly. The guy fought back and couldn't believe that the grandfather was still fighting after he used the technique. The old man wouldn't stop. Cha Won-yap didn't want to die like that and decided that he needed to aim straight for the heart. The kid decided to use the rotational force inversely. Cha Won-yap applied the second blood butterfly technique, the blood butterfly vortex. The guy deftly twirled his sword and cut off the old man's arm, after started to strike his grandfather continuously. The old man screamed. He didn't understand what those red butterflies were. Cha Won-yap, meanwhile, used the third technique. He jumped and in the air began to strike the old man's back. In one of these strikes, the guy broke the old man's weapon after Cha Won-yap landed on the ground. The old man fell to his knees, chuckling. He didn't think he would go to the other world so soon, but the grandfather didn't want to go alone. He pointed his weapon, what was left of it, at the head. Needles started to come out of the spike ball. Hanpil stepped forward and with his sword began to throw the needles away. All the spikes hit the trees. The old man fell face forward. Hanpil was looking at his sword unhappily. Yeoju worriedly crouched down to Gyu Yeon. The girl reassured her that it was already over. Cha Won-yap exhaled and thought that he should become even stronger. Gyo-young sat with her face screwed up in pain. Behind her stood Cha Won-yap. He treated her wounds and asked her to be patient for a while because he was doing it for the first time. The girl holding her stomach asked what sect he was from. Hanpil asked Yeoju not to blame herself because they were prepared for this. He said that these demons were known as the demons of the northern forest and they could take a break soon. Suddenly, Hanpil heard the sound of wagons. 2 wagons were approaching them. Gyu Yeon was wary that they could have been from the Blue Dragon Bureau, but her brother replied that they weren't. The wagons stopped and people got out of them. It wasn't obvious from their demeanor that they were enemies. The man assumed they were from another bureau and had come in response to news of the Golden City. The stranger started to approach them, but Hanpil asked to confirm his identity. The man replied that they were from Luoyang and had come because of the news. He asked if he could see the head, but his gaze soon found the girl herself. The girl shouted happily. It was her uncle Seok Bu, and the girl beside him was named Ju Ryong. The man asked if they were from Hanam, but the head wasn't listening to him anymore. She quickly ran to her relatives. It had been 5 years since their last meeting. Her uncle's name was Samwon Jingle, and Jinju Ryong was the oldest daughter of the Dead Sea Bureau. Yeoju was very happy to see them. She had missed them all this time. They had been looking for their wagon even in the Dead Sea Bureau. The Dead Sea Bureau was one of the three services of Hanum, on par with the Golden City and the Blue Dragon. They were aware that the Golden City was enduring difficulties, so Yeoju sent Ju Ren and a few other people to meet them. Ju Ryong tearfully said that Dad insisted on them going home, so she asked if they would go home. Yeoju hadn't seen them in a long time, so she happily agreed. Her uncle shifted his gaze to the boys and asked them to tell what happened while they were gone. The girl quickly told everything. The man said that they had been through a lot since he had left the post of the head of the service. He always regretted it, though, because if he had stayed, he would have lightened Il-san's burden and helped the girl through everything. The man asked Yeoju to let him help her. He was ready to go to the Golden City now and find Il-san. Yeoju was glad and said that if he was with her father, she could continue her journey with peace of mind. The man wanted to say that he would calm the Hyung and come back, and the girl had better go to the Dead Sea. From now on, he promised not to leave her. But the head asked him not to worry about her, and instead told him to help Yo-hoon in the mansion. Because it was hard to keep an eye on both the refugees and her sick father, she assured him that she was accompanied by amazing masters, so she was safe. The girl assured him that the boy's skills were second to none, and asked him to give her father her regards. Uncle took a closer look at Cha Won-yup. He was surprised that he was also a master because he looked younger than Yo-hoon. The other two looked experienced to him, but they stank. They didn't look like typical attendants. Her uncle put his hand on her shoulder and believed the girl and ordered her to carefully consider every move in his absence. Ju-ryong reassured him, telling him that they would return to Luoyang safely together. The head promised her uncle that her father and brother would meet him well. Jin Yutak, the eldest son of the Dead Sea Bureau, stopped to ask the stranger why he was following him. The stranger didn't answer right away. The boy assumed that he was in cahoots with those who were slandering the Dead Sea. The stranger advised him not to jump to conclusions and told him that he needed to introduce him to his elders today. Jin put up his fists and prepared to fight. The stranger also prepared himself and decided to end the conversation there. He respected the descendants of well-established families, so he ordered the boy to attack first. The man with the fan was Ju Jae-sung, the head of the Blue Flag Association, Black Turtle Pavilion. He was talking about the Dead Sea Bureau. He would prefer to use more active methods rather than backstage tactics. His assistant informed him that Chu Dal-hwa had managed to kidnap the eldest son of the Dead Sea Bureau. The aide's name was Mo Dae-min. He revealed that the son had managed to be caught when Jin Yutak was leaving early in the morning. The chief rolled up the fan, satisfied that Chu Dal-hwa was a good master. Mo Dae-min kneeled down and said that they would now negotiate with the Dead Sea with a valuable hostage. And now that the life of the head son was at stake, he wouldn't be able to refuse. But Ju Jae-sung wasn't happy that they would have to threaten. He didn't know what tactics his subordinates would use, but asked not to provoke them too much. Mo Dae-min smiled slyly. Yeoju arrived at the Dead Sea with everyone. The head asked them to wait for a while she said hello. Ju Ryong was glad that her sister had arrived because it had been a long time since they had met in this house. Excited servants rushed past them. Ju Ryong worriedly asked what was wrong. Jin Sang-gong, the master of the Dead Sea Bureau, came out to the girls. The girl asked her father what happened. The man, after a bit of silence, still said that her older brother had been kidnapped. The girls were very surprised. The father said that the son had left early in the morning, telling him that he would prepare for her arrival and had not been seen since. The head hesitated and said that the same thing was happening to her bureau. Their goods were either stolen or attacked by bandits. She recalled a case that even their mansion was attacked once. They had heard that this was happening in Luoyang too, so it was obvious that it was all the work of the same people. Sang-gong was scared because it was a big problem. Yo-young, Hanpil, and Cha Eun-yup stood near the wagon and watched the head and her relatives. They realized that the situation here was no different from the one in the Golden City. Cha Eun-yup was silent. Mo Dae-min approached the two men. He wanted to meet their master because he came because of his son. Ji Sang-gong asked Mo Dae-min if his son's disappearance was related to him. The man started making it look like it was the head of the Dead Sea who was to blame for what happened, and he came here for a solution to the problem. Jin Sang-gong understood the man's intentions. He decided to accuse him and tarnish his son's honor by using the story. He knew that if he started to defend his son, Mo Dae-min would use force. If the head would grant their requests, then there would be nothing to fear since he would have his children, but right now there was nothing he could do to this blackmailer. Jin Sang-gong assumed that what Mo Min was trying to say was that he needed to hand over the estate to them, and then his son's life and reputation would be safe. The man asked to be given a day to think it over. Mo Min agreed to wait. The man stood up and said that if he made the right decision, then his son wouldn't have to worry about him. He promised to offer a fair fee. Mo Min turned around and said snidely that if he had a hard time sleeping because of the offer, he would explain his situation to his higher-ups so that they would offer a high fee. All this the head told Yeoju and Jiryung. The daughter screamed that this was crazy. She asked to find a way to reveal the truth. After all, they had to save her brother. Yeoju held her sister. Her father said that this was what they wanted. If they used force, they would only put Yu's life in danger. The girl was upset, but was willing to give up everything to make sure her family was okay, and she figured they would find a house. Cha Woon-yap came to them and told them to make a contract. The guy said that if Mo Min came back and asked for a contract, they should have told him to bring their son to the specified place. After they would agree without suspecting anything, he also asked to let him escort them to the place. The head didn't like it. He was sure this was not a situation they could take part in. The boy plucked a leaf from the tree and said that he himself didn't like to get involved in other people's squabbles, but this one might have had something to do with the enemies he was pursuing. This deal could help him achieve his goals. Cha Un-yup threw the leaf and used his energy to chop it into several pieces. Everyone was shocked. The guy said he thought he could help the chapter save his son. Ju-ryung asked how many total pieces it got. Gyo-young was not happy. Her brother explained to her that Cha Un-yup had observed her technique too fast, so he was able to repeat it. The girl was infuriated, but she was impressed by his strength. Yeoju asked her uncle to trust her and listen to the guy's advice, because thanks to him, their city was out of crisis. The head of the Golden City believed that the guy could help them too. Ji Sang-gong agreed and said that the man would be back tomorrow night. And now he asked them to tell the plan. Cha Un-yup replied that they needed to meet at the appointed place. Ji Sang-gong and Kyo-young ended up going with the guy. They met with 3 men. The head said they would send 2 of them, and once the contract was handed over, they would have to send his son to them. The man said that they don't trust them since they're sending as many as 2 chaperones to them. But Ji Sang-gong replied that they were using questionable methods, so he didn't trust them. Mo Min smiled and promised that his men would take good care of his son and asked them to follow him. Yeoju asked Han Pil why the young master decided to take his sister with him. The man assumed to return the hostage. She was fast and well-oriented. The guys will try to find their main men. Mo Min was scared running through the forest. He let his guard down, thinking that the 2 of them could be easily defeated. But the guy realized that the head of the Dead Sea had circled around them, having such a skilled fighter at his command. He was glad that at least he could repel the light attacks. He needed to warn the boss soon. Mo Ming was already sweating all over. He decided to use the flare. Suddenly, Cha Un-yup appeared from behind. He hoped that Mo Min was running to his higher-ups. The guy looked at him fearfully. In the next second, Cha Un-yup killed him. He looked in the direction the guy was running. There was a mountain in front of him. He assumed their main ones were there. Cha Un-yup decided to explore everything after sunset. The guy took the contract from him and read it. He decided that since they were willing to pay in gold coins, there were no ordinary people there at all. He put it to himself and thought that since all the negotiators were quiet, these guys wouldn't be hiding. Cha Woon-yap also hoped that Gyo-young was following his plan. The son returned home a little battered but still alive and well. Gyo-young was with him. The father was happy to see his son and hugged him. Han-pil went over to his sister and asked what was wrong with Cha Woon-yup. Gyo-young didn't tell him anything. She turned to the head and said that they needed to start preparations. Yeoju didn't understand what kind of preparation she was talking about. Gyo-young replied that it was Cha Un-yup's plan. He told her that there would absolutely be an attack at night. Jin Yu-tak thought that there would be an attack from his kidnappers, but the girl herself didn't know all the details. But Cha Un-yup was still there trying to find the kidnappers' lair. Gyo-young told them that if Cha Un-yup was there spying, the enemies would launch a full-scale attack. They were prepared too, and Gyo-young was sure she wouldn't be surprised if the kidnappers came with reinforcements. The girl turned around and motioned for everyone to get ready. Han Pil thought it would be hot if guys like that clawed guy showed up. The enemy head had already been reported that all the members of the negotiations were dead. The servant replied that the battle was at the specified location. Chu Jae-sung, bringing the fan to his chin, thought that they had all planned this from the beginning. He ordered to gather everyone and attack the Dead Sea Bureau at night. He realized that the opponents were looking for their main base, so he said that they should attack early. But suddenly Cha Won-yup appeared and said that it was already too late because he had found their base. Everyone got excited and started asking who he was, but the main man yelled for them to follow orders. Cha Won-yup came down to them, immediately attacking the main man. Ju Jae-sung closed in with a fan. The chief yelled at the guys not to stand pillar. The subordinates immediately obeyed. Ju Jae-sung promised to kill the guy painlessly if he revealed his motive to him. But Cha Won-yup wouldn't reveal anything to him and said he should be the one asking the questions. The man in charge got angry, attacking, started threatening that he would make him answer. The man thought he got the guy, but Cha Won-yup was no longer there. He was behind Ju Jae-sung and asked about Yayo Sa'an. The man aimed the Golden Thunder fan technique at the guy. Several fans flew straight at the hero. Cha Won-yup, all the fans were able to avoid. Ju Jae-sung thought that even if the guy had been practicing martial arts since childhood, but he hadn't practiced it for more than 20 years. But he didn't understand how a guy reached such a level at such an age. The man decided to end it all in one blow. He swung the fan and shouted that the person the guy was looking for was not the kind of person that could be negotiated with. He directed his energy at Cha Won-yup. The guy stood her up and started to apply his second blood butterfly technique. A whirlwind of bloody butterflies flew at the man. Jo Jae-sung screamed. The guy, like lightning, ran at the man and with his whip gave a fatal blow. The man fell to his knees. The guy ordered him to spill everything he knew. Ju Ja-sung admitted that he didn't expect to meet such a master, and since the kidnapping idea was his, he only agreed to answer one question, no more. The guy asked if he knew Seol Soo-young. The man replied that he had never heard the name and collapsed on the floor. Cha Won-yup so knew that the girl was good at hiding. Now that he knew everything he needed to know, he decided to return to the Dead Sea Bureau. There was a battle in full swing. Gyo-yeon told her brother that they were as good as black assassins. Suddenly, the girl was attacked by two opponents at once. Her brother saw this and worriedly called out to his sister. The opponents launched an all-out attack. The guys were surrounded. The man thought that Cha Won-yup had stirred up a hornet's nest. Suddenly, a man appeared from above and jumped right in front of Han Pil. He ordered everyone to step back and promised that he would handle it himself. The guy had iron claws. When the blue-haired guy saw them, thought of Gui Ryung, but he still thought this guy was better. The cocky guy said he would take care of them and suggested Han Pil to go out alone. He agreed. The opponents ran at the girl. The guy with the claws killed one, but the rest broke through. Gyo-yeon spotted them. Her brother was excited and already wanted to run to her aid, but the claw guy wouldn't let him. He clanked his weapon on the man's sword, angrily asking where he was going. After all they had agreed one-on-one, Han Pil swung at him, but the unknown man repelled the attack with his claws. Han Pil wasn't a bad master, but he wasn't a genius. And on top of that, he needed to keep an eye on his little sister. Gyu-yin suddenly called out to young Master Jin. The guy had fallen down and risked being mortally wounded by the enemy. The girl brushed off the attack and urged him to get up sooner, but the guy couldn't get up anymore because the enemy was looming over him and aiming his sword straight at his neck. Jin restrained him as best he could. Han Pil was distracted by the young Master Jin and was wounded in the side. Claws unknown dug right into his ribs. The boy asked the man to concentrate on him and not to worry about the others, with the claw informing him that the Dead Sea Bureau would disappear. Han Pil was already wishing Cha Won-yup was with them because they weren't obviously failing. Gyo-yeon was able to come to Jin's rescue. She killed the attacker, but they were surrounded. One of them shouted that it was over, but finally Cha Won-yup came. He killed the man with one punch. The girl helping Jin grudgingly asked why he couldn't show up sooner. Han Pil noticed him too, along with the clawed stranger. The guy was swinging his whip. Jin thanked the master, for it was only because of him that he was alive now. The clawed guy looked at Han Pil and realized that he and the girl were brother and sister, so he looked at Cha Won-yup and assumed that he was also their brother. The guy was also looking at the stranger, the drawing on his forehead and iron claws, and he also realized from his movements that the guy had been in business for a long time. He remembered that from the Seol family, that they were fists with dragon claws, the same kind of weapon Sanmi used. Cha Won-yup was happy to finally meet him, and since the guy was one of the Chan family's warriors, the guy ordered him to attack with all his might. The unknown guy with claws was surprised that Cha Won-yup knew about them. He thought he should catch him first, but suddenly he felt himself being attacked from behind. It was Han Pil. The guy quickly turned around and blocked the blow with his hands. The man gloatingly returned his phrase that now the guy wasn't concentrating on him. The clawed guy was surrounded. Chow Yun swung his sword and hit the whip right into the kid's side. Han Pil was attacking him from the other side, but the guy put out his claws just in time. The kid was thrown away from them. He wanted to attack, but Cha Eun-yap interrupted him and said he was better than the man with the fan. The unknown man immediately stopped, hearing the familiar description. Cha Eun-yap assumed that the guy with the claws knew more than that man. Cha Eun-yap ordered him to tell him everything the man knew about Chung Sun-mi. Claw Guy angrily asked how the man knew that name. He stood up and decided that when he defeated the guy, he would find out who he was. Cha Eun-yap drew his sword and proposed a deal. If the clawed man won, he promised to let him go. But if he won, he would let the clawed man go when he got all the answers to his questions. Han Pil noticed that there was something different about the boy. He assumed it had something to do with the Chan family. Claude agreed to this arrangement, and they started fighting. Han Pil holding his injured side, he thought he could have left this guy for Cha Eun-yap. He decided to help his sister and young Master Jin with the rest of the opponents. Cha Eun-yap attacked the guy, but the guy fended off all attacks with his claws and used them to strike back, but missed. The clawed guy recognized that Cha Eun-yap was strong, but thought that he was still no threat to him with his sword technique. The stranger pointed his claws at the guy, but Cha Eun-yap threw them all away. Then he pointed, then claws downwards, but the hero jumped up. In the air, he said that the guy was overestimating his abilities since he thought he could win like that. Waving his whip in the sky, promising to retrain the clawed man, red butterflies swirled around him. A beautiful wave from the whip flew straight at him. Cha Eun-yap applied his bloody butterfly technique. Claw cowardly thought that the guy was winning. A powerful whirlwind of blood butterfly flew at him. The impact was so strong that Han Pil, Gyo-yeon, and Jin stopped. When the dust cleared, the clawed guy sat on his knees. He laughed. He felt that Cha Eun-yap didn't even put out his full strength. The guy wanted to promise that he would defeat him next time, but Cha Eun-yap sat down on his knee and asked him if he really hoped their paths would cross again. The clawed guy grimaced. Cha Eun-yap put his sword around his neck and asked which faction he belonged to. Suddenly, the clawed guy's voice sounded in Cha Eun-yap's head, saying that he was from the alliance west of the river, the Black Turtle Pavilion. Their leader was Yayul Sa'an. The guy let him go and ordered him to deliver a message to San-mi that the revenge of an old acquaintance was coming. It was over in the courtyard. All the guys were thanking the head of the Golden City and her helpers. Cha Eun-yap was sitting thoughtfully on the fence. Gyo-yeon came up to him and offered him a drink from a bottle. He asked what it was. The girl said it wasn't poison and ordered him to drink it quickly. Gyo-yeon told her that her brother had a hole in his body with blood spurting out of it, and Mrs. Yeoju would be very concerned. She noticed Cha Eun-yap looking too serious, so she was willing to listen to him and offered him a drink. Ji Sung-gong came to Yeoju's place. He thanked the girl for her hard work. Thanks to her, the Dead Sea Bureau was still afloat. The man asked her where she found these people, and she said she met them when she needed them the most. But Uncle warned her that she should not let her guard down, because if they were such martial arts experts, they could use it against her. The man didn't want to say that, after all. They had helped him, but he was afraid that Yeoju might have gotten hurt. The girl was agreeing with him. She thought it was strange that the guys were helping a helpless bureau that wouldn't be able to pay. But Yeoju was willing to be loyal to them until they abandoned her, because when she started her expedition, the guys had risked their lives many times for her. The girl said with a smile that she didn't think they were bad. Her uncle replied that since she trusted them, he would too. The man asked what her transportation plan was. Yeoju replied that she was planning to reopen after the break. Nothing big. The girl warned that she would be staying here for a while. Also, Yeoju was curious to hear his opinion on transportation. Ji Sung-gong was always happy to help the girl with advice. Gyo-young sat down next to Cha Eun-yap and asked him that he was so serious because he was looking for a woman. The guy guessed that the girl brought alcohol to question him drunk. The girl laughed, remembering that Han Pil told her that they should carefully get close to Cha Eun-yap. Gyo-yeon was surprised at that because the guy helped them. The man told her that she saw her look change after it was revealed that the clawed guy was from the Chan family. Han Pil had tried to determine his faction from his sword technique and philosophy, but none of the beggars had heard of him. But Gyo-young excitedly suggested that if he wasn't from the beggars, then he wouldn't be a problem. Brother said that he had heard that a new faction had formed in Kamsak province. It was called Flying Dragon Gate. The faction was formed from the union of the Kam, Sok, and Sol families. It was suspicious that two huge families had formed an alliance and invited experts. Hanpil wanted to find out what kind of relationship Cha Wunyup had with this guy who had shown particular wariness towards the Kamsok family. Go Young had told Cha Unyup that once their expedition was over, she would move in as a family member, but she felt strange that she only knew about the guy in name. The guy was a little confused that it was such a big deal. The girl poured him some alcohol. Cha Wunyup told her that he had been a servant in an aristocrat's house since he was an infant, and when he felt like leaving, he went to the mountains to hone his skills. The girl thought that the guy had found his master in the mountains. She wondered where he learned martial arts from. Cha Wunyup, while drinking alcohol, saw that Yugyung wanted to know his lineage. He realized that she was sent by her brother. The guy was plotting what Suyung would do in his place. Cha Wunyup stood up and concluded in his thoughts that it was natural that he was suspicious to them. After all, the origin of his technique was unknown. The guy replied to Gyu Yan that he liked being free. He wanted to find his way to get closer to the power he wanted. Cha Wunyup wasn't sure about his limits and what he would do in the future. He was just training to get stronger. The guy admitted that trying to change like that person wasn't such a bad idea. Gyo Young understood her brother's intentions but made sure that Cha Unyup wasn't the kind of person who would get them in trouble, and all he did was save people. The girl handed him the bottle and asked him to have another sip. That way they wouldn't have secrets from each other. The guy said she was getting him drunk, and by that she wasn't being trustworthy. The people were being chased by assassins. There were 5 enemies. These people were exhausted from the 5-day chase, so they took a short break. But the poor people couldn't think that they would be caught up so quickly. There was an exit from the forest ahead, but the way to it was blocked by bandits. There was a man standing on a rock. It was Su Bom. He was watching them with an evil face. The youngest called her brother and sister. Her brother asked Bo Hyang not to be afraid and promised to protect her. After an altercation, the chief of the Flying Dragon Gate sect ordered his subordinates to kill the boys. But suddenly Su Bom's voice came from the cliff. He heard about the Flying Dragon Gate sect. The chief turned to him. The guy towered above them. Everyone was alarmed and asked who he was. Su Bom asked what was the name of the head of the Flying Dragon Gate. The guy promised to kill the bandit leader if he didn't tell him everything. The guy only laughed at him. Su Bium drew his sword and used the 7 flowing blades technique to kill all of his subordinates. The leader was lying on the ground, looking at Su Bom fearfully. The guy came closer and once again asked about the sect leader. The guy put the bloody sword blade to his neck. The bandits stammered and said that they only received orders from their superiors, but no one had ever seen their faces. But the bandit narrated that they only knew the names of the pavilion masters, Sol Sadeok and Jang Pil Young. Su Biom was surprised to hear these very familiar names. The guy knew so. He inquired. This faction was formed by the merger of 2 families. After all the questions, the guy ordered him to leave and promised if he came back, he would kill him. The guy quickly slipped away. The brother and his 2 sisters thanked Su Bom. The guy replied that it was better for them to move to a safe place now. The brother introduced himself. They were all from the Sop family in Kamsok. His name was Sop Bo, but the guy didn't finish. His sister was very hungry. Su Bom caught 1 rabbit, but it wouldn't be enough for them, so he suggested they go to the nearest inn. The guys were sitting in the inn. The younger sister was eating noodles. The older sister was a little worried. She looked at Su Beom and thought that she was now eternally indebted to him, but she was uneasy. Their atmosphere was so tense that it was hard to even make conversation. The younger sister asked how the guy was related to the Flying Dragon Gate sect. Su Beom answered her that he wasn't directly related to the sect, but he needed to know something, and also told them that if they knew something, he would welcome the information. His brother told him that in Kamsok, the Chan and Sol families had united to stop the Flying Dragon Gate faction and declare their independence. They tried to make each family their own. Their SOP family was invited to join the new faction. But when their family refused, the faction ruthlessly attacked them. Their entire family, grandfather, father, and younger sister, were all dead. Only he and his 2 younger sisters, Bo Hyang and Bo Young, were left alive. The man said that they wanted to get to their uncle's house in Seonyong. The brother's name was Sop Bo Seong. He was the eldest son of the Sop family, Kamsok province. The boys were captured by enemies on the way. The sisters sat sad as they listened to their brother. Su Biom knew that the Sop family was one of the top 5 families in Kamsok province. He didn't understand why this family was involved in the sect. Bosong asked the guy where he was going. The master replied that he was going to cite him where his masters were now. His older sister noticed that he was heading towards Qinghai province. She offered to keep them company until they reached their uncle's house. Subium was silent and suddenly heard suspicious footsteps. The opponents were already here. The guys were wary of his change of mood and Bosum asked what happened. Subium stood up and told them that the bandits had sneaked into the inn. He ordered them to finish their meal and then leave as if nothing had happened because he didn't want the other guests to get hurt. The boys walked down the road in the dark, Bosum asking the master where they were and why they were here. Subium stopped and said that they would be out soon. At that very second, the sisters stared fearfully ahead. Ahead from behind the trees, bandits came out from behind the trees. There were many of them. They were led by the one that the guy took pity on and let go. The leader of this group asked the man if he was the man who killed their men. After the guy said it was definitely him, the leader pulled out his claws. The man pulled out the claws and said that Subium had interfered with their work, so they had come to kill him. Subium recognized the man's weapon and immediately guessed that the guy was from the Chan family. The guy formed blue flames of energy around him. He was very angry. The leader was not afraid of him and smugly replied that he was from the Chan family. The man didn't believe that one guy could defeat them. Subium formed a golden ball in his hand, surrounded by a black veil. He pointed it at the men. They were astonished because they had information that the guy only used a sword. The man did not have time to utter his next words. He was overtaken by Subium's power. The opponent flew off and crashed into a rock. The others stood and looked fearfully at Subium. The guy pointed his finger at the one he had spared and said that he was next. The guy from the last group was scared to tears. Subium had warned him that if he tried again, he would kill him. The bandits fearfully drew their swords in front of them. Subium was angry that everyone from the Chan family was the same. He prepared to form an attack. Bosum and his sisters were also scared. The man covered them with himself from the master just in case. Subium created the orb again, promising that he wouldn't leave anyone alive. He threw the Asura Sutra directly at the bandits. Everyone was immediately dead. Bo Sam, Bo Hyang, and Bo Young fell to the ground. Covering themselves, the brother frightenedly noticed that the guy's martial art was from a demon. To the man, Subium's appearance resembled a demon. The guy was very angry. In the darkness, his eyes were glowing bright blue color. He looked frightening. Jin Sunggong sat in the office and sighed sadly. He was worried that it would be difficult to revive the bureau. They didn't have enough funds. He was looking at a book and wondering what he should do. Cha Wun-yop came to him and asked him what he was worried about. The guy himself came to the chapter to see because Yeoju was also facing such a dilemma. The man asked him to tell the girl not to worry too much. Cha Wun-yop promised he would and put a sheet in front of the man. It was a receipt. The guy said that there was already 10,000 for today. He brought to lend it to him. The head was very surprised. In return, Cha Wun-yop asked him to make a written promise to the head of the song service and calculate it by the interest rate in the elite market of Luoyang. This was all to work out after the expedition was over. This budget was to rebuild the transportation service. Jin Songgong was surprised where the guy got so much money from. Chai Wun-yop revealed that he had taken it from those who kidnapped the master. Jin Sunggong had suspected so, but now he was definitely convinced that the guy was a brave man. The man put the slip into the chest. After handing over the written promise to their head song, the guy thanked Jin Sunggong. Cha Yun-yop, after getting everything he wanted, went out of the office. The head was satisfied and thought in his mind that his brother, Il-san, didn't have anything else to worry about. A few days later, the 80th birthday celebrations of Master Namgung Song-yu, the head elder of the Namgung family, began. When the guys heard the news of the opening, they went to Luoyang for both rest and relaxation. Gyo-yeon, Han Pil, Cha Eun-yop, and Head Yeoju sat at a table filled with all kinds of food. Gyo-yeon was delighted with the goodies. Yeoju thanked the guy and said it was all thanks to him. Cha Eun-yop disagreed. There were many people in the room. Suddenly, Han Pil looked suspiciously at the hooded man who was watching them. Cha Eun-yop saw him too and asked his comrade if he knew these guys because they were watching them closely. The man suggested that they might have been survivors. The fellow felt that the hooded guys were emitting a strange aura and voiced his concerns that they weren't like the usual provocateurs. Han Pil was unsatisfied. Where could these bandits have come from this time? He didn't realize who exactly they were, from the Sochon Alliance or the disguised members of the Black Veil. The guys wondered that if their target was Yeoju, they would have attacked back at the intersection and not in a place like this. Yo Young thought that last time, she almost got killed the last time they disguised themselves as an ordinary person. The girl was sure it was a black veil, in which case she decided to attack first. Han Pil and Chaon Yap, meanwhile, came up with a plan. They decided to all but Yo Yan to pretend to switch places. They asked Yeoju to stand up, but Yo Yun couldn't stand it. She stood up, pulled out her sword sharply, and yelled that she would kill them all. The three hooded men who were watching them got frightened when the girl started running at them to attack them. They screamed and covered each other. Suddenly, Chaon Yap from one of the guys spotted a needle he had already seen from the mercenary girl. He managed to block the girl's path and urged her to stop. The guy told the pissed-off Jio Yan that these were not easy people. There was a scared girl sitting on the floor with a green pendant around her neck. Cha Wunyup noticed a sign on it. It showed a snake. He asked them who they were and why they were following them. The guys bowed their heads guiltily, one of them showing a needle, and asked if they could talk about it somewhere else. The girl who had the needle was going to explain everything to everyone. They came out. The girl introduced herself. Her name was Tang Yuhua. She was from the Tang family. The girl was the head of the family. Yeoju was surprised. The Tang family of Sichuan province excelled in creating and using poisons and antidotes. A single drop of poison was capable of killing hundreds of people and sending opponents to the underworld with needles thinner than a strand of hair. Their expertise in the production and use of poisons and antidotes was unrivaled and left no room for comparison. Han Pil didn't understand why the Tang family of Sichuan needed them, but the guys explained that it wasn't them that were needed, but the black veil. Guyan was alarmed. Her brother blocked her way and asked why they needed the black veil. But the head of the family couldn't tell them that. She explained that she just followed them after they got the information that the black veil was targeting them. Yuju asked that they were going to continue following them until they met the mercenaries. Yuhua apologized and said that they had that plan. Cha Wunyup asked the head of the family to look at his sword. The girl stared at it in surprise. The guy said it was his sword. It was similar to the amulet that Yuhua had dropped earlier. They were made by the same craftsman. The girl asked in amazement if Cha Unyup knew him. She really wanted to find it. But Cha Unyup didn't know himself and admitted that he was looking for him too. He warned that if they clarified the situation, they could work together. Yua's brother turned to her. The girl tiredly leaned her hands on the table and decided to tell. Only she asked them to promise her that they would not tell anyone about it. Yua told her that their family had an amulet that they had been trying to complete for a long time. It had been a long time wish and regret of their family. However, recently, there was a glimmer of hope when she saw the Black Veil amulet. They thought that if it was the creator of the amulet, perhaps he could dispel their regret. Yua was able to find out that the creator of the amulet was Zhongli Jekon. The girl said that if Zhongli Jekon really made the amulet and their family, then he could become an important figure in their Tang family of Sichuan province. Yeoju worriedly asked what they were going to do. Yuhua was going to continue to follow them. The head thought about it. Yo Young noticed this and suggested for her that they all go together. Yuhua asked if that would be okay. The girl came up behind Yeoju and put her hands on her shoulders. She replied that it was okay and asked what the chapter's opinion was. Yeoju was flustered but still agreed. Han Pil noticed that the Tang family didn't have to attend the Namgung family celebration. Although it was a very important event, Yua replied that this mission was more important to them than anything else. Even her uncle, the head of the family, grandfather, and elder went to it. The man was surprised by this. Yua explained that the celebration would be to discuss the creation of a new sect called the Flying Dragon Gate, which is supposed to unite the Seol and Yang families. Cha Wunyup was surprised that the Seol and Yang families were united into one. He angrily thought of Sanmi and the fact that she had taken control of the Seol family after all. In the basement, a dirty, disheveled man was sitting in the basement and making weapons. It was Zhongli Jaechan, Doc Nagun, the deputy head of the Black Veil, approached him. The man asked the big man if he had finished the zipper arrow. The lightning arrow was like an ordinary lightning strike, a crossbow arrow striking the target with tremendous force, with explosive powder sprayed on the tip that detonated as soon as it reached the target. It took a technical expert to create a weapon of such caliber. Chong Li Yahan was suitable for this role. To them, he was a pathetic kid who had been brought here in pursuit of a woman. The guy sitting at work wondered what Gurman was doing. The man still couldn't tell that the girl was dead, so he lied to the lad that she was on a mission. He lied that she took his weapon with her and said she really liked it, so the guy would finish mastering the lightning arrow quickly. Poor Zhongli Jaishan miserably asked him to wait another 10 days. Doc Gun chuckled gloatingly. It was to his advantage that the guy was just making them a weapon. He was waiting for the lightning arrow to be ready so he could deal with Cha Won-yup and Han Pil personally. The deputy left. Jaekon remained seated, examining the arrow. He eyed the man suspiciously. Yuhua and her brother introduced themselves to the Yeoju family. The head of the Dead Sea, Jin Sanggong, also introduced himself and said he didn't think he would meet the Tang family from Sichuan province. Jin Yutak greeted the guys in a friendly manner. The old man suggested they continue their conversation inside. They went, but Yua decided to delay and called Cha Won-yup. She wanted to talk to him. The girl asked him about Jaekon. The guy told her that he learned about him from his father and decided to repay the sword by saving his son. Yua offered to take the guy by force. Cha Won-yup clarified if she definitely wanted to do that, the girl was willing to do anything for the good of the family. The girl lowered her head sadly. The guy remarked that Madam wasn't that type of person. Yua asked why he thought so. Cha Won-yup said that throughout his life, he had met many different people. In their eyes, he saw different things. But in her eyes, he saw a desire to defend the family's honor and a slight fear in the face of uncertainty that everything would end well. He thought that such people usually avoided serious problems and acted cautiously. Their head was the same. But Cha Won-yup had promised that if such a situation came up, he would keep his word. The girl noticed that the guy had honest eyes, and she already realized that it was impossible to deceive him. Yua thought about it and asked if that man decided to follow them, would he allow him to do so? Cha Won-yup replied that as long as they didn't force them to take him with them by tricking him. Cha Won-yup and Yuhua returned to the guys who were eating lunch at the table. An already groggy Han Pil greeted them. Yo-young asked where they had been alone for so long. Yuhua friendly replied that it was a secret. The girl pouring alcohol for Yuhua replied that since it was a secret with Cha Won-yup, it was hardly anything suspicious. Madame remarked that they trusted him. Jeo Yeon said that the guy was the one helping to make their services name known, and she just trusted him as a colleague. Yo-yeon went outside. She was cold. Suddenly, she turned her head and noticed a crowd of people. They were recruiting volunteers, but suddenly she saw Cha Won-yup carrying a box along with Yua. The girl was surprised that he had such a strange outfit. She wasn't happy with what the guy's plan was this time. The deputy head tried out the lightning arrow. He liked it a lot. The subordinate informed him that their intelligence had successfully infiltrated the enemy bureau. Dong Nagong laughed gloatingly. Looking at the poor piggies he had tried his weapon on, he shouted that it was time to hunt. A few days passed. It was night. Steam was coming out of Han Pil's mouth, and it was noticeably colder outside. Go-young was pensive. Her brother asked what was wrong. The girl told him that Cha Won-yup was plotting something with the Tang family. The guy wouldn't let them come near and didn't say anything himself. She was furious that Cha Won-yup, after everything, suddenly comes up and asks her to help him set up an ambush for the Black Veil. In her opinion, that was enough to get him the death penalty. She angrily promised when it was over to try and find out what happened. Suddenly, Cha Won-yup came up to them and asked her what exactly she heard. He walked up to them and grudgingly said that he ordered them to be bait. Yu-yeon awkwardly held her head and giggled. She said she thought she'd get more attention that way. Suddenly, Cha Won-yup smelled a familiar scent. Turning around, he complimented the girl. Han Pil announced that they were already here. The man asked his sister which side she was choosing. The girl chose the left side. The mercenaries were already rushing towards them. They started a fight. Cha Won-yup pulled out his sword. He thought that as long as everything was going according to his plan, he decided to try something. The guy was surrounded by bandits, but he quickly dealt with them with his sword. Han Pil noticed with an edge of his eye that Cha Won-yup's abilities had improved even more. The girl was killing mercilessly. Suddenly, she knew that these guys who attacked them were their volunteers. Yo-young approached Cha Won-yup and asked what was wrong, and if he knew about it, the guy admitted that he did. Suddenly, arrows flew at them. The guy was puzzled when they landed in the ground and exploded. The girl worriedly inquired if Cha Won-yup was okay. The black-veiled deputy stood on the roof and watched the guy. He saw his sword. The man thought with annoyance that he could get them in trouble. Cha Won-yup knew the man. Doc Nagun himself was a little surprised that the guy knew about him. The guy pouncing on him shouted out that it was very easy to gather information about him. The deputy let out arrows. But Cha Won-yup cut them all with her sword. Doc Nagun was momentarily confused. The guy almost got him, but he got away from the attack in time. But still the guy got him, and now there was a long wound on the deputy's chest. Doc Namgung threw a smoke grenade. When the smoke cleared, Han Pil, annoyed that he ran away, Chaon Yup shouted to him that they couldn't have gotten far. The guy rushed to catch up with him. Master Sung suggested he go together. Chaon Yup realized that he didn't just run away. Most likely Doc Nagun was in the mansion and the hideout. But he would have a hard time there too, because in the mansion were the Tang family and Yeoju. It was only when Yua, her brother, and the head got in Doc Nagung's way that a bang was heard from the side. It was Chaon Yup and Han Pil. They were rushing after him. Doc Nagun pulled out another weapon. He didn't think he would have to use it in a place like this. Jahan had crafted it. He handed the weapon to the deputy and said that his invention could be very effective against a large number of people. He threatened to use it to send everyone to the other side at once. He threatened a lot and promised to start with Cha Wung Yap because he had heard him. The man frantically threatened to make them all disappear, but the weapon in his hand exploded along with his hand. Everyone was shocked, especially Doc Nagung. Jahan had promised him that it was an unrivaled weapon, but now the deputy guessed that the guy had somehow found out about Gumran's death. Doc Nagun screamed frantically. Cha Un-yop attacked him and killed him with a single blow. A bald man was running through the dark forest. He saw Jeshan's invention explode in the deputy's hand. Now he was threatening to kill him. Yo Young approached Cha Un-yop and asked about his plan, and she was curious how he knew that spies had been sent to them. The girl asked him to tell him everything because she was dying of curiosity. The guy looked at Yuhua. The girl agreed to tell him everything. The Tang family hadn't lost sight of the black traders. Information had come to them that they had infiltrated various agencies and provinces as mercenaries. Therefore, Yuhua assumed that the Black Veil was serious about them. The young master devised a plan accordingly. They created a reagent that helped detect traces from extremely poisonous substances. Its fragrance could be recognized 1,000 miles away. Because of this, they made the mercenaries sign with their own hands with a brush dipped in this reagent. The black merchants mainly used the deadly poison, which was nicknamed soul-destroying blood poison. The assassins themselves received a small dose of the poison daily to get their bodies used to it. When they touched the brush with the reagent, a faint glow was formed that allowed them to anticipate their movements in advance. They then spread this fragrance 1,000 miles away, chasing on the heels of the Black Veil. It was easier for them to attack when they were all bait. Such a plan was born by itself, so Yua apologized. Suddenly, Yo Young remembered that her brother had smelled the scent. The man now understood everything. Cha Wunyup said that they could now follow the trail of the runaways and go to their main base to rescue Jejung. The girl had used the scent to see the path. She informed the guys that she had sensed which direction they should go. Cha Wunyup asked everyone to hurry up. Yuhua had to lead them in the right direction. The boy and girl rushed ahead of everyone. Yua informed Cha Wunyup that the scent was becoming more pungent. Cha Un-yup remarked that the mercenaries didn't notice that they were following them. The girl replied to him that it was a scent she had been working on for a long time, so only her family members could distinguish it. But Yua worried that the survivors might have killed Yukun. The girl had heard that the Black Veil were the proudest of the assassins. They could do anything to those who tarnished their honor. The girl was already tired of running. Cha Un-yup saw that. He stopped and told her that he would go on his own from here and ordered her to go back and rest. Yua had spent many nights preparing the medicine, but she hadn't made reagents, so she should be fine. The guy calmed her down and told her that he wouldn't take away by force the person she cared for. The first time they met, Cha Wunyup sensed the girl's sincere feelings for that person. Yua decided to trust him. She reached into her inner pocket and took out a potion bottle. It was a drug that could make the guy more susceptible to the scent. Cha Wunyup took it in his hands. The girl begged exhaustedly to save Jacon. The blacksmith was already being bullied by the bald man in the Black Veil. The guy only laughed because since the man was taking out his anger on him, his plan had succeeded. The bald man was angry and threatened to kill Jekon. His mouth was bleeding, and he urged the man to kill him. But the bald man, bringing the tip of his sword closer to him, replied that it was pointless to kill him now. The man promised to kill him very slowly and painfully, and he wanted to start with his fingers. Cha Wunyup came to the rescue in time, his bloody butterflies immediately flinging themselves at the mercenary's face. Cha Un-yup stood next to Jekon. He was glad he had finally found him. The blacksmith himself, seeing the soft sword in the guy's hands, recognized him immediately. The lad introduced himself and said that he had come to fulfill a promise he had made to his father. Jishan was surprised, but he didn't know how to go back. After all, he left his elderly father after losing his head over a woman. He was ashamed. Chanyup, swinging his sword, said that everyone makes mistakes, and wise was not the one who didn't make mistakes, but the one who learned from them. With a soft sword, the lad broke the chain on Jekon's leg. He promised the lad that he still had a chance, holding out his hand to help him stand up, asking him not to miss it. The old man dropped the hammer from his hands. In front of him was the shaggy and frazzled missing son. He was trembling all over. They embraced and fell on their knees. The grandfather asked his son where he was and why he had returned only now. The big man could not answer anything because he was crying. Now the boy repaid the old man. Coming out of the armory, he noticed Yuva, who had come to meet them. The old man and his son came out to them. The man apologized. The son wiped his tears. The blacksmith saw that the lad was about to leave and anxiously asked how he could repay him. But Cha Eun-yop had already received his reward, the sword. The old man took his hand and thanked him, and then inquired about the young lady with him. The girl introduced and said what family she was from. The grandfather was surprised. He knew what her family did. The old man snickered and asked what she needed from them. Cha Eun-yop answered for Yuwa. He said that the young lady had been a great help in saving his son. The man laughed. He didn't even know about it. Yuwa folded her hands in a respectful gesture and said it was her duty. Yuwa informed her grandfather that she had come about the master. Young lady Tang spoke honestly about everything that had happened so far. Yuwa promised to treat the old man's son as a nobleman, and if his son didn't mind, they were willing to provide protection for him. Cha Eun-yop told the master that as long as his son's talent did not fade, people would continue to persecute him like this in the future. So he convinced the old man that sending the lad to a safe place was a good solution, somewhere where his talent would be respected and safety guaranteed. Jehon looked at his father in anticipation. The old man understood what the boy was saying, but it was not his decision to make. Jehon snickered and said that he had dishonored his father with his actions in the past, so now he was willing to do as his father said to avoid the same mistakes. The grandfather looked at his son. Yuwa said that she also creates weapons, so she realized the value of the talent his son possessed. The girl was honored to work with the young master, so she asked if he would give her the opportunity. The old man was silent for a moment, and then said that if she was sure her opinion of him would not change, they could take his son. After hearing this, the girl, happy to call the man her father, thanked him for his trust. She promised to do everything in her power to help the young master. Cha Eun-yop, watching them, realized that no one thought as much of Jeshon as the young mistress. The guy turned around to leave. Jekon stopped him. Cha Eun-yop stood up. He waited to see what he would say to him. The guy kneeled down and said he thought he was a monster. All he knew was how to handle a hammer, so he was going to die that way. Jejung admitted that when Cha Eun-yop cut his chain, it was like he was reborn as a human. Yuwa sat next to him, supporting him. The girl continued for him and said that Jekon wanted to honor him as a named brother. Cha Eun-yop didn't know what that meant. But then he got angry and shouted that the guy should go to the Tang family, and if he wanted to have an affair with him, he wouldn't get anywhere. The old man explained that his son felt a strong, brotherly love for him, but the guy didn't like it. He didn't want the guy to bond with him as a named brother. Because he was afraid that this attachment could cause a lot of trouble, he was sure that they were making the man weak. Cha Eun-yop clenched his hand into a fist with anger. He had helped him because of this freedom from attachments, and he was asking to do such a stupid thing to him in his opinion. The boy, looking at Jehon, who was kneeling, remembered how the great young master had treated him like his little brother. Cha Eun-yop had thought at the time that he was trying to use him for the sake of Miss Su Young, but Su Bum knew everything. In the end, the guy decided to bond them. As Jekon made a sword, his bloody butterfly technique was completed. He asked him to extend his hand. He used the sword to cut his hand in himself and join their wounds together. They were now blood brothers. Cha Eun-yop swore to anyone who dared to touch Jekon to chase him all the way to hell and kill him. The boy bandaged his wound after all the rituals. Jekon Yuhua helped with his wound. Two men came in to see them. They were Yuwa's grandfather and uncle. The grandfather's name was Tan Moon Chong, and Uncle Tan Chong Ai was the head of the family. While Cha Eun-yop was thinking all sorts of things, the girl introduced Jekon to the relatives. Cha Eun-yop was riding in a carriage with Yuwa's grandfather. Moon Chun asked the guy where his brother-in-law's brother was. The old man speculated that maybe his granddaughter and Zhongli Jejung would become a couple. Then he would become his son-in-law. The grandfather told the guy that as soon as he saw them together, he felt like they had a strong family. Cha Wun-yap realized that the grandfather had decided to go back with them to find out where he was from. He replied that it was an unremarkable place. Moon Chung looked at the guy and thought about it. From his atmosphere, it didn't seem that way to him. Cha Wun-yap decided to lie that he was from the Moongate sect, which carried on the traditions about breathing techniques passed down from generation to generation. The old man asked the guy for the title of his master, or at least his name. Cha Un-yop smiled sweetly and asked if he had heard of the divine monk Taiyi, the great hero Wan Sahu. The man hesitated and replied that he seemed to have heard, or maybe not. Cha Un-yop, of course, knew that he hadn't heard of that name because he had just made it up himself. Cha Un-yop thought about the author of the book and decided that this grandfather could have been his master, because the one who wrote it could be called a master. The grandfather admitted that he was interested in the moon-breathing technique, but he couldn't handle it, so he asked him to give him a chance to evaluate his strength. Cha Wun-yap thought that the old man had a goal of sparring with him from the beginning. He figured that if this person had such a temperament, it would be a headache for him. But the guy had no other choice. He agreed and asked what he had to do. Everyone got out of the carriage. The grandfather pointed his palm at the green ball. The girl's uncle explained that the lad needed to push this iron ball so that his father could fully appreciate its power. The man explained to them that they should move the ball halfway from its original position until it reached the line, and then they should slowly loosen the force. The old man was ready to start already, and she began the competition. Cha Wun-yap was curious to compare his strength with the elder of the prestigious family. He decided to take the opportunity to gauge the degree of inner strength. The two of them together directed their strength towards the balloon. His uncle was surprised to notice that his father was repulsed. The old man's inner strength fluctuated and dissipated smoothly. He had never met anyone with such energy. Cha Wun-yap acted mysterious and refined, very smooth yet strong and graceful. But the old man felt an uncontrollable, immeasurably evil qi. But despite its grandiosity, it was not oppressive, but rather refreshing and pure. The old man decided to try another push, his son excitedly noticing that his father's strength had weakened. Suddenly, the old man contorted his face into a horrible grimace and applied all his force on the ball. Suddenly, everything went away, and Mu Chong was surprised to see that the ball fell to the ground, pushing it through. Mu Chong stared at his hand in astonishment. He thought he was ready to reflect anything that could be fired like a bullet. Looking at the guy, he didn't realize what kind of strength he had. It was already night. The old man, sipping alcohol, asked about the last breath in the moon-breathing technique. The guy thought he meant to say that he was missing something, but the man asked if Cha Wun-yap mastered this final technique. Would he learn all the secret techniques of the sect? The guy replied that the final step of this breathing technique had a fatal side effect. Cha Wun-yap said that the technique gave tremendous power. The better he mastered it, the better it worked, but the more poison accumulated in his body. The guy explained that unless the poison was completely neutralized, even though he would master the technique completely, he wouldn't be able to use it properly. In fact, Cha Wun-yap made all of this up specifically for the old man. Young Moon believed him and suggested that his master had become a hermit for that reason. The guy agreed. Lowering his head, Cha Wun-yap lied that if someone forcefully tried to learn the technique, the side effects would worsen. The old man replied that it was unfortunate. However, the guy lied again that his master had found one opportunity and therefore assigned him a mission. The old man was curious about what kind of mission Cha Un-yap was on. The guy lied that even using all the elixirs could have a temporary effect. So the master told him that it was necessary to always have something with him that could sustain him and would have a continuous effect that didn't lose effectiveness for a moment. Among them, he named an immortal orb that was resistant to poisons, but it existed in legends. Cha Wun-yap seriously said that the master had asked him to obtain a white warm poison-resistant jade, the best in the martial arts world at the moment. The old man was surprised because the white warm jade was a corrosive item that was hard to get even their clan. It was also surprising to the grandfather that the guy knew about it. Cha Wun-yap made a sad face and said that this item was so valuable that it couldn't be obtained even for a fortune, and also the Tang family itself didn't know where to find it. The guy lied that he would be ashamed to look the master in the eye. Jong Moon became worried. The old man got dizzy and apologized and went for a walk to refresh his head. Cha Wun-yap asked him to take his time. He was even a little embarrassed to deceive the old man. but he hoped to at least get the white warm jade and poison wine, following the elixir of life this way. In the Golden City service, Uncle Yeoju sat at the table and read a document. The class of the document was confidential, etc. It said that Hanam's 10 largest bureaus had nearly collapsed, and their positions were quickly taken over by the Heavenly Dragon, Jinan, and Pegasus bureaus. These 3 bureaus had secretly destroyed the others and seized their bases, but no evidence of their connection or their illegal activities had been found. In plain sight, they were conducting normal business and nothing suspicious was found. But the man thought confidently that the timing of their appearance and similar methods for taking over the bases of the fallen bureaus was no mere coincidence. Uncle decided to check the following letter. Among the 3 accompanying Song Yeoju, one large man was recognized as a sword demon Oma. The identities of the other 2 could not be revealed. The man studied the cases that happened to Yeoju during this time, and when he learned about the 3 demons, he was surprised that they were able to defeat the 3 northern demons. Uncle could still guess who was that fast master with the sword demon, but he had a hard time judging who used the soft sword. He still didn't have much information. After the major battle that happened in the early morning in Luoyang, the activity of the Pegasus Bureau that was planning to expand had temporarily stopped. At the present moment, the Golden City's capabilities were unrivaled, but the man still wondered who were these escorts that Yeju was sure of. Cha Wun-yap was a person with a special aura. The man immediately sensed it. And as much as he didn't think so, the guy wasn't like an ordinary attendant. Therefore, he was very curious about where Cha Wun-yup had come to them from. He came to the decision to go to Luoyang when he was done with his business in the Golden City. Suddenly, an excited Yo Hong came running to the man. He informed his uncle his father's condition had worsened, and he was urgently calling for him to come over. The rice plate was overturned and covered in blood. The man was sitting on the bed, coughing up blood. Uncle ran to his brother and asked him not to overburden himself. The former head's name was Sung Il-sang. He was in a bad condition. The uncle asked his older brother not to worry because Yeoju was safe. He noticed that the blood and energy was flowing backwards. It was dangerous. The man stood behind his brother's back, exuding energy. He asked Yeohun to hold his father. The uncle placed his palms on his back and applied the 9 revolutions Blue Yang technique. The man tensed up because the block on the bloodstream was more serious than he thought. Suddenly, the man felt Cha Wun-yup's energy. It was gentle like a stream, but strong like waves. The guy's energy was not fragile, but not rough either. Uncle felt the blood flow slowly started to flow in the right direction, according to his yang-based 9 turns technique. The man asked Yeohun, who used to look after his older brother. The guy gave a description of the person that Cha Wun-yup matched. Il-san vomited blood. The younger brother stopped using energy. He frowned at his brother. The biggest block blocking the blood flow had disappeared. The man thought that the mysterious energy had played a crucial role to bring him out of critical condition. Uncle would want to find someone capable of controlling his life energy for his brother. The man turned to Yeohun and ordered him to just monitor the situation. The boy was glad that they were able to help his father. The uncle thought that a doctor like Jung Ma-hyup could have such energy. Still, the man was very curious as to what kind of background Cha Wun-yup must have had, that he had such tremendous power at such a young age. Cha Wun-yup folded his hands in respect, thanked the Tang family for their hospitality, and now their paths were parting. The man asked him to wait and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a pendant and said that it would be a badge of honor that the boy was a member of their clan. Cha Wun-yup was angry. He didn't want to get attached to anyone, but the man answered him that this pendant, showing membership in their clan, also served as protection against poisons. The pendant was not made of white jade, but the man promised that the item was capable of resisting most poisons. He asked Cha Wun-yup to accept the pendant as a token of gratitude. The man realized that with the guy's skills, not many people could defeat him, but he would still often encounter unpleasant people. But let the enemies know that they were behind the lad's back. Then they wouldn't act rashly. That was the purpose of the man giving Cha Wun-yup this plaque. The guy accepted the gift. He was even surprised that there were so many good-hearted people in the Tang family. The man promised to get a warm white jade. He asked the guy to visit their clan as soon as it was over. He cheerfully informed that if his niece and Seong Zhongli became a couple, Cha Wun-yup would also become a no stranger to their clan. The lad replied that when they met, they would exchange warm white jades. He bowed politely to the man. Suddenly, the guy was called out by Gyo-yun. Cha Wun-yup was surprised where the wagon of the Golden City was here from. The man behind him suggested that the transportation service had become popular recently. The girl shouted happily that she was happy to see the guy. Yeoju came out of the carriage along with her uncle. Seeing the man, Cha Won-yup was moved. It was already dark. The guys were having dinner. The guy asked the head how she knew where and how to find him. The girl said that after they disappeared with the Tang girl, she asked Mr. Gi Chol to find them both. And after she found out that he was in the Tang family, decided to come. But the guy didn't understand why they all came together. At the table sat Yo Yan, Master Sung, Yeoju, her uncle, and Cha Eun-yup himself. Yeoju reported that the Dead Sea Bureau business was settled, so they could set off again. Just in time, her uncle showed up. After discussing it, they decided to go to the Namgung family, and thanks to her uncle, they were able to find the young master. The head was going to the Namgung family. There were a few people from the Orthodox faction that were supposed to gather there. It was a great opportunity to learn more about the Flying Dragon sect. The girl's uncle was looking at Cha Won-yup suspiciously. Outside after dinner, the boy approached the man. He praised him for finding a good inn, because now everyone could rest well after the long journey. Especially the head of the service could now rest properly after a long time. The man replied that he had heard a lot about it from Yeoju, and since it wasn't long before the Namgung festival, he suggested that Cha Eun-yup rest and prepare to travel for a few days. Cha Eun-yup noticed that the inn had few visitors. Even though there were always a lot of people staying there, it looked like someone had deliberately gotten rid of the locals. The boy asked the man if he knew anything about it. His uncle decided to ask about the Flying Dragon sect right away. The man, seeing Cha Won-yup's reaction, asked not to worry because his niece trusted him and he didn't want any unnecessary sacrifices. The boy assumed that the man was affiliated with a cult, but the uncle replied that it wasn't so, but he couldn't say anything more. He tossed the weapon up and said that he could find out more if Cha Eun-yup did something to start with. The guy released his sword. Mercenaries popped out of nowhere and attacked Cha Won-yup. He jumped up, surprised by the combined attack. One of the mercenaries, seeing such light and agile martial arts, decided that he could not be underestimated. The mercenaries started shouting out instructions on how to attack the guy, but while Cha Won-yup managed to fight back, the guy even reached his sword to the girl's mask and cut it open. The girl screamed to come at him from the west and south. The man attacking from behind, Cha Won-yup managed to hit him. The mercenaries were not relenting. The guy released his powerful blood butterfly technique. Everyone was startled and Uncle Yeoju stopped the battle. The mercenaries were not at their best. The man slyly grinned and demanded to continue talking. The man offered Cha Eun-yeoju a drink. The guy, setting up a shot glass, was displeased that the man was ambushing him first before pouring it. The man and Cha Won-yup sat on the ground. The four warriors stood behind Uncle Yeoju's back. He apologized for his impoliteness, but explained that it was a sure method to show off his abilities. Now he could see that the guy's reputation was well-deserved, and he could speak to him with peace of mind. Before he began, the man decided to express his gratitude because thanks to Cha Won-yup's efforts, his brother had overcome his illness and was now recovering. But the guy replied that he was just sharing his energy. He saw it as nothing special. Uncle revealed that shortly after his return to the Golden City, his brother was in critical condition. He immediately pressed the Minmen acupuncture point and tried to direct then life energy inside his body. And at that moment, the strange energy that was hidden in his brother's body greatly helped unblock the other acupuncture points that originally had a block on them. It was a mysterious energy, but Cha Won-yup replied that there was nothing wrong with it and assured that it was all thanks to his brother's life force. The boy glumly asked his uncle who he was. Cha Eun-yup assumed that the man was from a secret organization. The uncle mentally marveled at the lad's insight and decided that he couldn't hide anymore. Cha Won-yup himself hoped the man would tell him something useful. He wanted to hear all the details. The man asked Dong-ho to cordon off the neighborhood. The guy did the errand. Cha Eun-yup, while drinking, noticed that the man had some impressive subordinates. The guy suggested that if the four of the guys worked together, they could make his sword bear sweat. The man confessed that he had made inquiries not only about Cha Eun-yup, but also about the sword demon and his sister Gyo-yeon. He had heard that the girl had killed over 10,000 black veils. He had also heard rumors that they had destroyed 3 northern demons. And basically the man had heard about all the feats the guy had managed to accomplish. To the man, Cha Won-yup's actions were only to the man's advantage. The guy taking a bite of meat and assumed that the guy wanted to make him his subordinate. But he didn't want to agree because he was pretty good at gathering information himself. The man surprised Cha and Yep by saying that he wanted the guy to command them. He asked to take the procession over the four of them instead of him, because if someone like the guy guided them, he would be at ease. The man knew that the flying dragon sect was following him, and as long as they were following them, he would be able to gather more information about them. Cha Wunyap didn't believe that the mercenaries would obey him, especially the woman treated him as an enemy. But the man replied that after an argument, they would agree to obey him. But the guy still didn't like the idea. He asked to call the guys here so he could tell them he was against it. The man, while covering his eyes, reported that he knew that the guy was looking for Su Young, the eldest daughter of the Seol family. It didn't matter to him how good the guy was, but it was hard to gather information alone. The man himself had been warned by Dong Ho about Cha Un-yeop's attitude towards Jiang Semi, so he understood a lot of it. Cha Un-yeop thought the guy was blackmailing him. Then the man replied that he was just assuming because he didn't have any solid proof. Uncle was showing the guy what you can find out when you're not working alone, he called out to Dong Ho. The man, taking the sack from his subordinate, said he knew the lad had been doing nothing but swinging his sword besides eating and sleeping. He suggested that he could change Cha Wunyup's mind if he offered him 4 volumes of secret martial arts known as the 4 powerful, strange martial arts skills from around the world. The first was the heartbreaking demonic sound technique left behind by the extraordinary monster musician Song Cho-gi, rumored to be able to drive hundreds of masters insane with a single flute. Next was the water immersion technique left behind by a man named Tamayul from the Golden Bell Island in the Eastern Sea. Legend has it that he could swim like a fish. Third was the Maosan demon records left behind by a martial arts master named No Dangsi from the Maosan sect, said to contain the bizarre and unconventional techniques of the Maosan sect. And the last was a secret technique called the 3 deceptive demonic secrets left behind by the demon deceiver No Jongi. The last book they had received only recently, so the man didn't quite know its contents. All the books were from the secret archives of the Imperial Palace. He promised that if the guy accepted his offer, then any book could be his. It was a very tempting offer. But he wasn't sure if the man really wanted his involvement. But since his uncle had warned him that the sect would start sending strong masters, it could be of use to him. He realized that one day he wouldn't have Eom Han Pil and Seo Gyo-yeon with him, so he needed to become stronger. He thought about accepting the offer. Cha Wunyap agreed and chose the book 3 Deceptive Demonic Secrets. The man clarified if it was definitely the one the guy wanted to take, because the other books were easier to study, but Cha Wunyap assumed that it didn't have flashy techniques. The uncle was a little surprised by this choice and asked himself if the guy could choose the right path like Jong Mahyup. The man handed the knife to Cha Wunyap. This guaranteed his credibility in the eyes of the 4. This is the yellow dragon dagger. Any orders from the guy would be treated as if coming from the imperial family, but he couldn't use it to harm the imperial family, etc. Cha Wunyap took the dagger in his hands and asked to call the guys. He turned to Dong Ho, assuming that he was in charge among them. Dong Ho told him that each of them had 4 subordinates who had their own 4 subordinates. Cha Wunyap asked him to call them all here. They met and the guy gave the first order. He told them he didn't need them and ordered them to stay out of his way. The second order was while the boss was on vacation, the guy sent everyone on vacation because they had many subordinates, so the intelligence network was excellent. Cha Wunyap was not satisfied with all the information being found out by them first, so he sent them on vacation. The guy threw a dagger to Dong Ho. The third order was that, during their vacation, all questions were to be handed over to Dong Ho. Everyone stood in shock. The guy turned around and happily informed everyone that he would be busy learning secret techniques. He promised to keep his word, and in the meantime, the guys could rest. Suddenly, Uncle Yeoju laughed. He guessed that the guy had cheated him. He didn't expect the guy to respond in such a way. Through his laughter, he asked everyone to disperse. The guy promised to keep his word, so the man trusted him and told his subordinates that they only had to wait. Head Yayol sat on the throne. A subordinate reported to him. The servants of the imperial court and the Marine Alliance had been active lately. The Namgung family meeting was organized by the emperor's dog, Shengguan Jinji. The Marine Alliance acted through the beggar elder, the master of information gathering. The big problem now was the beggars who were free to roam anywhere. And there were many more problems, but Yayol decided to deal with the emperor later. But for now, he would deal with the beggar elder, Muyong Shinge. He asked his subordinate to tell Elder Yomsul-bi that it was time to hunt down Muyong Shinge, whom he hated. Chan Yap was practicing a new technique. To master the illusory demonic technique, one had to make one's breathing and pulse abnormal. A person couldn't live a second without a heartbeat, but it was this healthy breathing and pulse that were the shackles that limited a person's abilities. If completely freed from these shackles, one could become like a celestial, surpassing all limitations. By blocking the various energy channels of the body and controlling the internal energy, one could achieve unprecedented power. This was the essence of the illusory demonic technique. Suddenly, the guy grabbed his heart. Cha Wongyup leaned his hand on the floor in a huff. This technique was completely different from the breathing technique of Dai Yuum Tonapgyung. The book talked about denying everything human and gaining strength by becoming something superhuman. The very essence of breathing was different from Tonapgyung, created to heal illnesses. The book was strange, but Cha Wongyup liked it. He really wanted to master this technique. The guy stretched out on the floor. He had been concentrating for an hour, but he was already very tired. He tried to repeat what was written. It was only because of the Tonapgyong energy that he didn't go to the other world. Cha Wongyup picked himself up to see what was written on the last page. It said that in order to comprehend everything written above, then one would reach a state of unity of heart and movement, where the body would move simultaneously with the thought. The guy thought that if the trajectory of his butterfly technique followed his thoughts exactly, then he could create techniques superior to the current ones. Cha Wongyup rose to his feet, opened the door to the outside, and shouted menacingly at his subordinate about what he was doing here. They were standing in his room. The guy wasn't happy because he had sent them on vacation. Dongho, showing him the dagger, informed him that as long as he had that dagger, he could be wherever he wanted. The subordinate noticed that the guy was breathing heavily, so he asked what had happened to him in 24 hours. Cha Wongyup didn't answer, but only asked what he wanted. The mercenary asked him to help him save the man, but they had a lot of people under him. The guy didn't understand why they needed him. But Dongho explained that everyone had their own responsibilities, so it was hard to get them together. Dongho heard that the So-Chongmin Alliance was chasing the Morim Alliance elder, and he should pass through here in half an hour. Mr. Shangguan was temporarily absent, and it would be difficult for them alone to protect him. Dongho offered to take Han Pil with him. But Cha Wongyup didn't want to take him because he actively wanted to find out about him. Dongho was surprised. He thought they were friends. The guy pouring sweat replied that everyone had their own ulterior motives and asked why he thought he would help when he already had the book and could have escaped at any moment. The mercenary turned to the window and expressed that when he studied the information about him, he thought the guy valued loyalty and promises. But since he didn't want to help, Dongho didn't persuade him and ran away through the window. Cha Wongyup took the dagger. After some words, he decided to follow. The battle was in full swing. The beggar elder put a stick forward and shouted that if they were serving the emperor, they should fight willingly to die with the enemy. 3 incomprehensible men appeared. The main old man was Yom Sol B, a soul-capturing demonic sword. He thrust his sword forward and shouted that neither the imperial court nor the Morim Alliance would stop them. A mercenary flew at them from behind, but Sol B used a technique on him. Soul-capturing demonic sword. Dongho had a hard time restraining it. But Cha Wongyup came to the rescue with his third technique. He angrily told Dongho that he was going on vacation to the other world and promised to talk to him when it was over. Cha Wongyup clashed with the old man. The subordinates were all fighting. CLB recognized the guy. He had killed someone, but it wasn't enough for the grandfather to stop. The old man would like to deal with the guy, but he couldn't miss the prey he had to catch. Just as the old man with the hat was running away from the battle scene, Cha Wongyup, fighting Seol B, angrily thought that the grandfather in the hat couldn't even run away normally. The mercenary girls saw the grandfather running away, but they decided to leave him behind. Seol B saw that Cha Wongyup was strong. He decided that there were enough games for him for today and promised to crush everyone in one blow. He released a huge, powerful energy. It was difficult to withstand it. The old man used the 10-death formation. To Cha Wongyup, he was the strongest person he had ever met, so he should have killed him with one strike too. But because of the illusory technique, his body was behaving strangely. The guy clutched his chest. He decided to try to use the knowledge he had gained against him. He tried using Tam Tonapgin's energy and used the 4th butterfly technique. The guy's red powerful energy was released on the old man. Everyone was stunned. Blood gushed out from Sol B's mouth. Cha Wongyup himself fell senseless. The girl bowed down in front of him. The guy didn't wake up. They suspected something wrong. Cha Eung-yup's face was tense. Dong-ho was surprised to see that there was a dissent from the guy. Everyone was concerned. The girl grabbed him from behind by his shoulders and started releasing energy. Dong-ho yelled out what she was doing. The mercenary replied that they couldn't stand there and just watch. After all, he was trying to help them. Everyone joined the girl to help Cha Eun-yup. After all, if it wasn't for the guy, they were dead. Suddenly, everyone was shaking. The girl's mouth was bleeding. Dong-ho felt that the guy was getting better, but if they continued, they might lose their way. Suddenly, Uncle Yeoju came to them. He leaned into them with his blue energy and ordered them to concentrate. Something more serious happened than Uncle thought. He came back because the contact happened sooner than he thought it would. He thought that if it went on like this, the guys would all go off the path, and he couldn't let them all die. A yellow-green, powerful glow erupted. Cha Eun-yup's whole life flew before his eyes. Suddenly, Soo-byum grabbed his hand. He was angry and said that he was paying for his arrogance. After all, no matter how smart he was, not everything in this world happened the way the guy wanted. Soo-byum said that his mask fell when he met someone who had similar insight. Soo-byum asked Cha Eun-yup what he would do, and if he could find Soo-young. Here the guy opened his eyes, shrouded in red energy. Han-pil thought about it. Yeoju noticed it and asked what was wrong. They hadn't seen Cha Eun-yup for a long time. The man told his sister to let the guy rest since they were near the Namgung residence. So they decided to leave him alone. Cha Eun-yup woke up. He got up from his seat and asked where he was. The mercenary girl told him not to worry. They were in one of their huts. They had rescued him, but the girl replied that because he had killed the demon, they were still alive too. His uncle came into the room. He had already been told everything by Dong-ho. He informed the boy that they would be going to Namgung tomorrow. The man reported that Buk-ho pressed his acupuncture point in time. The girl blushed, saying that he was the one who decided everything at the end, hurriedly ran out of the room. The guy almost lost his way because of the illusory demonic technique. The man asked if he was okay now. Cha Eun-yup explained that if the old beggar man hadn't started acting so suddenly, he wouldn't have had to exert himself so much. Mu-young Shin-ga was carrying information to the Namgung family's residence, and the old man was trying to take advantage of the commotion to get to his destination. Sangwon Jingle explained that the old man was just doing his job like them, and thanks to his choice, he had already gotten there on time. But the fellow was not happy, for the 6 of them had almost died. Such matters were not for him, but he promised to help in gratitude for the rescue. But when the time came, he promised to leave. He wanted to pay off his debt to these people quickly. The girl came out to her team and anxiously asked why they were all gathered and if they were all right. Dong-ho told her that they felt even better than usual. One of them had a painful knot on his neck, and now it was gone thanks to Cha Eun-yup's energy. Cha Eun-yup was meditating. He was all surrounded by red energy, even though he had completely recovered his breathing and blocked his blood circulation. Unlike in the past, his body naturally absorbed the energy. The guy was amused at the thought that he had almost lost his way. But he was glad that he was traveling the world. There were many interesting things in it. In the central lands, the Tang family arrived at the residence of the Namgung family. The honorable head of the Namgung family, Song Yu, upon seeing them, was surprised that the old monster from the Tang family was still alive. The old man was dissatisfied that Song Yu, upon seeing his older brother, didn't bow to him. They started to argue. They were interrupted by Yuwa. The man introduced Jechan to everyone. He explained to Sung Yu that Jechan was an important person to their family. Sung Yu thought that the Tang family had finally found someone to help them achieve their long-time goal, and very soon their influence would increase. The old man asked Yua how they met. The girl, blushing, told him that she was lucky enough to meet an irreplaceable person. The girl promised that he would also come to the residence and introduce them. The head of the Namgung family, Hui Jun, suggested that everyone go inside and continue the conversation there. Song Yu and the Tang family elders stayed outside. Moon Young inquired about the situation in the city. Song Yu said that Mu Young Shin Gae had arrived at their place yesterday. Their fears had been realized, and now they had to prepare for the worst. Moon Young, remembering the devious Yayul, said seriously that they were finally getting into action. Yo Yeon went inside and was delighted with the luxury around, and admitted that it was even better here than the Gumsong service. Yo Ju also said that it was truly gorgeous here. Cha Eun-yup turned to Han-pil. He told the man that he was a celebrity, so they had to go to the Namgung family residence to introduce the gentleman and enhance the prestige of the postal service. As Han-pil and the head walked away, Gyo Yeon thought to Cha Eun-yup that he was a good guy. The guy told her that she would go with him to keep an eye on the surroundings, because there were all sorts of different types gathered here. Suddenly, Yuhua and Jejun called out to them, which was tiring for Chao and Yup, but he decided to quickly say hi to them and go somewhere else. The guy with glasses, Weiqi Zhonghyun from the Weiqi family from Hebei, walking down the street, noticed that there were a lot of people. He figured they were using this as an excuse to discuss important matters among the main families of the Central Lands. He hoped nothing bad would happen. He was called out by Pin Yun Li from the Peng family of Hebei. The guy happily ran to hug her. The girl asked if the brother was looking for Yua. Zhongyun asked why she was asking. Yun Li told him that she saw her with a strange man as they were talking to some couple. The guy thought that Yua had gotten a lover. He asked his sister to walk him to her. Chao and Yeop and Gyo Yeon walked by them. The girl exclaimed sharply that they were the ones she saw with Yua. Zhonghyun was surprised. His sister was puzzled by his reaction. The guy turned towards them, folding his arms in a sign of welcome. Cha Won-yup told him that they were guards from the Gumsong Postal Service. Zhonghyun knew about them. He was shocked to meet such important people. Cha Won-yup wasn't happy with his reaction. He just said that Yua was talking in the East Wing. The guy was surprised that Cha Won-yup realized that he wanted Yua, but the hero replied that he asked about her family, which means he was interested to know about the joyous event. Zhongyun was impressed with his insight, and thanks to Cha Won-yup's words, he roughly understood the situation of the Tang family. Now he was even more interested in learning about it. The guy asked to let him guide them around the Namgung family's residence. Cha Won-yup had extraordinary insight, which meant he was here to gather information. He gave a friendly smile and promised to help him with that. Cha Won-yup agreed. They walked down the road. The guy with glasses started a conversation, but the guy was distracted by the Namgung 7 servants. He remembered himself when he was in the Seol family. Head Namgung said hello to the Gongye family. He was grateful to them for coming all this way. The clan head said that he couldn't miss such a celebration, being the head of a friendly clan. Head Namgung had his doubts about that, but he still remained friendly. Cha Won-yup, upon seeing them, asked Zhongyun what kind of brigands they were. The guy told him that one thug's name was Chuk Bao. He had incredible strength and practiced external styles of Qigong. The other was called Mokyum Tai. He was also a master of external styles, and it was said that his crude iron mace had already killed dozens of people. The most terrifying of them all was the head of the Gong Yi family, Gong Ying Nak. His nickname was the Rimless Flying Double Rings because he used 2 rings in battle. The rings were the size of the palm of his hand, but when they left his hands, they flew toward the target with incredible agility, aiming at the opponent. Cha Won-yup was curious about the external martial artists. Yun Li looked at him questioningly, and Gyu Yan explained that the guy was interested in other people's martial arts. The guy asked Yang Hyun if he knew him. Suddenly, they heard a voice. The guy with glasses turned to the side. A man was walking towards them. The man was walking towards them and asked them to let him join them because he and Yang Hyun hadn't seen each other for a long time. The man was the 3rd son of Shimen's family, Shimen Pyo. This man used his older brother's power and clung to other families with dirty methods. The man was happy to see Zhonghyun. Suddenly, Gyuyang frantically pointed her finger at him. She remembered him. After all, he was the one who drunkenly wanted to take away her weapons. And afterwards, she was chased by the Black Veil. Pyo recognized her too. The girl frantically told Cha Woo-yup that he was the one who had unleashed the assassins on her. The girl threatened to turn him into a lousy dog. It was a shame for the man. But since that was the case, he chased right at the girl. He stretched his arms forward, ready to grab her. But Cha Won-yup appeared in front of him with his arm outstretched. He threw him off with energy. The man flew, screaming violently. Jin Hyun covered his hand with dust in shock. To Cha Won-yup, who saw Pyo rushing into the fight without assessing his opponent's strength, looked like a lousy dog.